Howell? Here. Smith Charles isn't here yet. Whitebird,
I'm here.
Hoffman,
Present.
Gershenson. Here. Markham.
I am here.
Charlie's in the building, I saw him.
Yeah.
Commissioner Cabell is actually joining us online.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Let's see.
Hi, everybody.
He is.
Okay, let's please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And with that, we will move right into our budget presentations, starting today with the Economic Development
Did you do public
Department.
comment?
And you don't look like the
When?
economic,
Did you do public comment?
Oh, no, it's after.
we don't do public comment at the
after.
beginning.
Got it.
Thank you, though.
I'm just here to do my, just kind of the introduction to everybody in the room. So you'll see the room is very full. We have a full representation from Economic Development. We also have several people from Budget. We have Joanne and Laura who help us with our budget. We also have several folks from HR, Monica, Haley, and Michelle, sorry. And so we are here, Brian and I will be here through the whole process, as we did last week, we're gonna do this week as well. Try and help answer some of the questions. We did slides that everyone's kind of using the same first few slides, and then they're doing their thing and answering your questions. So that's the way that we're gonna go this week. I think it went really well last week, and that's where we're going.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you. And I just want to add a little bit to that, that this year fiscal got in their stuff in the departments a little bit earlier in the process, which facilitated the communication along the way. And that seems to have been very helpful too. So thanks to everybody for trying to keep this on track. And welcome.
Welcome, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hi.
I'm Jean Broad, I'm the Director of Economic Development. To my left here, I have Dom Holmes, who's the Deputy Director of Economic Development. And to my right, I have Jennifer Llewellyn, who is the Director of Oakland County Michigan Works and heads up our workforce activities. And so we'll be going through various aspects of this presentation right now. Hopefully there'll be time for lots of questions. So Dom, start out.
Thank you for having me, commissioners. So I want to start with, if I can figure out how to navigate this, there we go. I want to start with department revenues, budget versus actual. And what you'll notice right away is an inflection point in fiscal year 2024. That is $5 million in ARPA funding, which is being used for placemaking. And of course, you would have already approved the local, interlocal agreements that would have been put together for that funding. I also want to make mention of the fact that roughly $6 to $7 million is expected in matching funds anticipated from communities that take advantage of the $5 million in placemaking funds. So there is also some additional leverage coming out of those dollars to make more of an impact. And then I'll quickly mention that when you look at the $5.3 million fixed figure in fiscal year 24, what you're also seeing is $316,000 that is going to things like, or that is coming from sources like registration fees, reimbursement fees, sales of maps and data from the department to members of the public, to public entities, to companies like Zillow, and then also seminars and conferences which we put on. So looking at the next slide, what you'll see under charge for services, if you look specifically at fiscal year 23, you'll notice around $416,000 in revenues. That is because in that year, we actually put on the VTM Michigan event, which is a large professional event where we bring in automotive industry experts from around the world to facilitate meetings here in Oakland County and bring more of that work to Oakland County. You'll notice a drop off in fiscal year 24 to $316,000. That's because this event is a biennial event, and so it's going to take place again in 25. But that accounts for that $70,000 to $90,000 in revenue that we would get from something like sponsorships and other activities surrounding that event. So you'll notice that drop off as well. And then I'll just mention again that $5 million shows up again in other revenues for placemaking. And then when we look at department expenditures, budget versus actual here, you'll notice a delta from year to year between adopted and amended. You are noticing the carry forwards that are hitting our budget. Some of that is coming from things like Thrive, some of that is coming from Project Diamond, and some of it is also coming from the U.S. Center for Advanced Manufacturing. And then again, you'll notice placemaking, which is causing our fiscal year 24 to rise to about $20 million in fiscal year 24. So again, that theme, that $5 million keeps showing up. And then if we look at expenditures adopted budget, what you'll notice in the first column under personnel is a steady gradual uptick in personnel cost over time. You'll notice that we have included again here U.S. Center for Advanced Manufacturing expenditures, placemaking expenditures, and Thrive expenditures, and operating expenses for fiscal year 25, which accounts for that uptick to $9 million, $9.6 million to be more specific. And you'll notice that the internal support costs from IT have steadily risen over time as well. And then as it relates to personnel, I want to make mention of the fact that this is GF, GP. This also includes special revenue and proprietary. And so what you're looking at here are headcounts for airports, business development, administration, marketing, transit, planning, and veteran services. And then what I'll call your attention to is if you look at the jump in full-time staff from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 25, a lot of that can be accounted for by the addition of divisions that became part of economic development over that time. So the addition of airports, which I believe has around 33 full-time staff, the addition of transit with the millage, and we brought on an additional 4 staff to carry out that programming throughout the duration of the millage. So that explains that increase. And then I'll just talk briefly about the vacancies. So what you'll notice is we have basically 8 vacancies here. 6 of those are special revenue positions, 3 from workforce development, 3 from business development. And then we have 2 GF/GP positions, 1 from veteran services and 1 from workforce development as well. So we'll sort of transition here to talking more about the programs and services that we provide. But before we do that, I want to address some of the discussion points that we received. And I'll go a little bit out of order. I'll talk about item number 2, then I'll go up to number 1, and then I'll pass the baton, if you will, to Jennifer to talk about Oakland 80 and workforce development. But what I want to say related to Project Diamond and that initiative is that we do have funding support through ARPA through fiscal year 26. And then we are also working with the state as the state has designated Project Diamond as a statewide initiative. We do anticipate some funding coming for that initiative through that source. We also have been having pretty robust conversations with DOD about their interest around national security and resilience, and the need to make Project Diamond more of a national strategy and national framework in advanced manufacturing. And so we do expect that this program will continue to get funding and support over the next few years and beyond 26. And then some of the things that Jean will touch on in her presentation, but I just want to briefly mention as it relates to that second question. I think one of the things that I want to highlight as a key economic development initiative that you can expect to hear more about over the next couple of years, the next year specifically, is site selection. One of the things that we have been doing internally is working on bringing in a site selection tool from GIS Planning that would allow us to showcase available sites in Oakland County to prospective businesses, to corporate executives, and anyone else who would have an interest in investigating Oakland County as a location to do business. You may be familiar with the DRP, our partner, who has a program that promotes very large sites in Oakland County, but this will allow us to promote the majority of the available sites in Oakland County to all those stakeholders, and so it's a very important initiative from us. Placemaking, again, which you've heard time and time again and are very familiar with, is another key initiative, and then tourism, which Jean will touch on in a moment as well. So with that, I'll pass the baton to Jennifer and the clicker as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. So in regards to this question on how this proposal assists workforce development, Oakland County Workforce Development serves as the Oakland County Michigan Works Agency and has for over 40 years as a division within economic development here at the county. So we are entirely special revenue, primarily federal and state funding sources, ranging from $16 million to $35 million annually, depending on the availability of grants and opportunities. The investment in the creation of an additional Oakland 80 position provides us the support to execute County Executive Coulter's Oakland 80 vision and goal, which is to have 80% of our residents earn a certificate, degree, or credential by 2030. When that goal was announced in February of 2020, we were at 61%. We are now hovering around 69%. So we are chipping away at that goal, and we know that this last 10%, kind of like the last 10 pounds on the scale, are going to be the hardest. So offering an additional staff person to support Rana Aligo, who's our Oakland 80 administrator. We do leverage the millions of dollars that come in through Oakland County Michigan Works in the Workforce Development Division, but having someone who can be dedicated to the committee work. We have over 100 partners, colleges and universities, nonprofit organizations, businesses, associations who have joined forces with us so we can achieve this goal together would be particularly helpful. In addition, deploying the resources that we have, thanks to the investment from all of you of American Rescue Plan funds, we've now deployed our Oakland 80 career and education navigators across the community and in the high schools. In the community, we have 14 adult education, career and education navigators. They've now touched base with 93,000 Oakland County residents and have delivered one-on-one career and education services to 2,125 residents. They've also participated in over 950 community events. We are in the process of deploying our high school navigators for this fall. We're very excited about that. Those navigators are already deployed in Pontiac High School, Harbor High School, Alternative High School, 2 alternative high schools in Hazel Park, and we're in the process of adding Huron Valley schools, Lamphere schools, Oak Park schools. I'm missing a few. We also have a navigator at Children's Village. And we're working on Farmington and Lamphere as well. So a nice geographic base. We worked with Oakland schools to identify school districts that were most in need and have prioritized those. So very excited to get the high school navigators deployed as well. So this additional position will allow us to see that vision through 2030, which I'm confident that we will achieve. It also supports our business community. Some people might say, well, how does Oakland 80 support our business community? But when we have a skilled and educated workforce, businesses follow, particularly our small businesses. We recently received a $35,000 grant from the state of Michigan to connect with businesses on how to help them understand Michigan Reconnect, which is Michigan's tuition-free community college program, how to help employers understand FAFSA completion, and host community events targeted at employees that might want to grow within their company. So this is a great way to move workforce development forward and help us achieve the Oakland 80 goal.
So before we move on to Jean and her section, I also want to mention that third question where it talks about small business support. It's important to name the fact that we have continued to work diligently to make the services of Thrive more robust, right? So they are providing very key support to our small business community. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jean.
Okay, so just as a review, the goal of the Economic Development Department overall is to promote a thriving and inclusive economy. So we'll talk about how we're doing that. So back, as you may recall, back in October of 2020, we released a strategic plan. And that plan, although it was originally focused primarily on COVID, it's turned out to be fairly robust and strong, and so it's allowed to provide the guidance and the framework for us to move forward in how we organize our activities and priorities. I do want to mention, and this has probably been clear, but the activities that we do have are funded from a variety of sources. So in addition to general revenues, which is really the focus of today's discussion, we do have federal and state grants. We have user fees from the HAZMAT program. And we also have cases where we work together with partners and they contribute. So we do a joint project of some sort together. So today I'm going to go over the full range of activities we do and sort of highlight the newer ones and the ones that are probably bigger focuses in 2020. And so to go back to our strategic plan again, it was really organized around 5 key objectives. There was inclusion, equity, business vitality and economic diversification, talent workforce, and you just heard a little from Jennifer on that, regional collaboration and quality of place. So just to make sure that I have time to cover all this, I'm putting our top 10 priorities right up front. And to go over what they are, we have the Pontiac redevelopment. We're not in charge of the construction or anything like that, but there are many ways that economic development is promoting, thank you.
Teamwork.
I'm not too good at this. I never get a lot of experience with the clicker at home. But in terms of working with the communities and local, place development and other sorts of things. So that's continuing to be a major focus of our planning team. Project Diamond, Phase 2, which we can go into a little bit later, coordinating with Thrive to optimize those services to small business, Oakland 80 that Jennifer mentioned, the tourism and marketing initiatives, Main Street development, that's the use of that $5 million you kept seeing in the outlier, some of the preceding staffs, VTM Michigan 2025, which we're looking ahead to for next year. And we have a new state requirement for materials management policy, which our planning is also involved in getting underway in conjunction with all the efforts of the BOC. And also I'd point out, we're also doing a study with our partners on better understanding our defense assets and how our companies can really take advantage of them to diversify their opportunities. And finally, just engaging, connecting with our local and regional partners. So a little bit more detail on this. The next slide.
It's the equity and inclusion. Go back one.
Okay. Whoops, what happened to the last slide? Okay, conclusion. So first of all, the Thrive Small Business Program, as you may recall, that was initiated in 2022. And since then, we've reached over 7,500 women, minority, veteran-owned businesses since the inception of that program. So we're continuing to look for new ways to reach our target audiences, to find programs that will help them. We've sort of added recently more focused programs focusing on, say, restaurants and other kind of niche areas, and continuing to look at the kinds of services that are most needed. Veterans Services was added to economic development a couple of years back, and since then we've added the resource fairs that have been very heavily attended and great help to our veterans, also food distribution events throughout there. And then this year, of course, we started the pilot program to offer free transportation to veterans, which is now, and along that line, public transportation generally is helping to promote our goals for equity. So since we got the millage passed, we're able to provide services throughout the county in a more seamless way. And that's also to help, to support moving disabled, other minorities, women, et cetera. Anybody really now, just to get to their jobs and to go about their lives. Workforce programs, I did want to mention that we have a program now for refugees and immigrants, which is, when was that started?
had the refugee immigrant navigator program for about 7 years now, but we have a new skilled integration program that provides support to educated refugees and immigrants who might have a credential from their native home country that hasn't been translated, and we can provide that translation support and the costs associated with that, and helping them transition into a career that matches what their credentials are from their native country.
And so finally, really new this year, there are Urban Maine Opportunity Grants. As you may recall, we accepted the money last year, the $2 million from NEDC under the SOAR program. We're planning to spend part of that money to really focus funds on supporting development in disadvantaged, underserved communities. We just launched that part of the program in the last week or two, and we hope that it's targeted at, say, 5 disadvantaged communities specifically to try to bolster development in their downtowns. In terms of business vitality, a key part of that program is just meeting with companies, finding out what their needs are, and connecting them with the resources to help them out. Last calendar year, we had over 690 meetings with companies, and this year we're on target already to exceed that level. We also provide specialized programming, events, overseas missions, other kinds of things to support growth opportunities. And on the attraction side, to a number of the kinds of things we're doing to get business to invest here in Michigan, we're focusing more on pre-vetted matchmaking meetings. Instead of just going to a trade show blind and hoping we might bump into somebody that's interested in Oakland County, we do a lot of research in advance to set up meetings with companies that we hope will be good candidates and that have an interest in investing in the U.S. We've also done more promotional events where we do events overseas that where we invite companies that we know have an interest in investing over in the U.S. at least, potentially this area, and talk to them more about specific areas and target areas. And we've also been able to get speaking opportunities in a number of our target areas, like mobility and whatever, and that's helped draw attention both to the county and to the companies in our county. On economic diversification, I guess the key areas here, advanced manufacturing, and this is where we get into Project Diamond. As you know, that program is providing support to companies to adopt advanced manufacturing processes. And phase 1 of Project Diamond, we were able to give away 250 3D printers to promote additive manufacturing. We're now just starting phase 2. We just started training the first cohort.
July 30th would have been the first cohort starting. And then we're anticipating a launch of the Digital Transformation Center, which is a shared facility where state-of-the-art equipment will be available for training and technical assistance to companies across the county. September 10th is the proposed launch date for that.
Right. And also along that line, of course, the BOC committed $3 million to support the U.S. Center for Advanced Manufacturing and Automation Alley. And that was another bumps you saw on our chart as the carryovers went through. So this has been a great attraction asset for us as well, because companies are interested in the commitment we have to promoting advanced manufacturing and all the skills we have in this area. And you mentioned we're looking for
the U.S. Center is looking for a more permanent location, potentially in Pontiac, and we are helping them through that process as we speak.
Mm-hmm. On the mobility areas themselves, we're looking not only at EV but hydrogen. We are hoping to do VTM Michigan, which focuses on advanced automotive and mobility technologies. That will be April 23rd and 24th next year. And this year we're going to be hosting that at the M1 Concourse. I would add the next one on defense and aerospace. This is another area that we think is really critical for our area. Right now, about 70% of the defense activity in the state takes place here in the south eastern Michigan area. And we want to find more ways to help companies get into this more higher margin, lower volume kinds of activities that are promoted, that are represented by defense and aerospace. Some of this can be done through the use of 3D printers. So it's sort of a linked program where the more companies learn about and are adept in the 3D printing, the more that expands their opportunities in defense, aerospace, and increasingly defense in this area. We have put together some annual conferences on defense and advanced manufacturing and aerospace. There's I think the next one is in November. We have dedicated staff within business development that are working with companies to promote opportunities in these areas. And we participate on the Michigan Defense Resiliency Consortium, which is promoting the transfer of battery technologies to the Defense Center. And finally, one of the joint activities we have going on this year in Region 10 with Wayne, Oakland, and the Wayne Macomb in the city of Detroit is a joint study to understand our defense assets and to come up with a strategy to really capitalize on them. Yes.
Jean, we only have a few more minutes, so just hit a highlight on the slide.
Okay, so we
We gotta get into questions.
workforce development, did you want to add anything more? Yep.
So as I mentioned earlier, as the Oakland County Michigan Works Agency, we're responsible for the county's workforce development programs across our 6 Oakland County Michigan Works locations, and those are in Novi, Oak Park, Pontiac, Southfield, Troy, and Waterford. Each year they serve about 100,000 job seekers and 3,000 businesses with a wide array of workforce development needs and challenges. The Going Pro Talent Fund is a state-funded program that provides support to both businesses and their employees. In the last 10 years, we've awarded $18 million to 650 companies, that's growing, we just had another pile awarded, to train 6,000 workers. So those are their existing employees, new hires, and registered apprentices. Registered apprenticeship is our newest endeavor. We recently received about $1 million of state funding to help incentivize companies to consider registered apprenticeship as a viable option for them. On our team, Liz Rivard Weston is our apprenticeship success coordinator, and she can assist small and large businesses with that venture. It can be a little bit intimidating when they find that they have to work with the U.S. Department of Labor, and so we assist them through that entire process. We're very excited that we launched a Child Development Associate, CDA, registered apprenticeship program, and we'll be adding 25 registered apprentices here in Oakland County to be CDAs. Also, I think you've heard about our recent addition of our Clean Slate Expungement Program. This came with some seed funding for us in 2018. That's now been continued with some grant funding through June of 2025. We've now expunged over 1,000 eligible convictions for Oakland County residents. It's been transformational. I've cried more times than you can imagine listening into these hearings and what it means for them for not just employment, but housing and being able to volunteer in their kids' school and many, many other things. So that has been some incredible work that the team has led. With your American Rescue Plan investment, as well as some competitive grant dollars that we've received, we now have the opportunity to support workforce barriers. So this is removing things like my car broke down and I can't get to work anymore. We can fix their car. They can't afford the books and supplies for school and they're almost at the finish line. We can purchase those books. Over 850 childcare scholarships at $1,200 each have now been awarded to Oakland County families. So removing barriers to employment and education has been transformational for many of our families and helping us achieve that Oakland 80 goal. And then last but certainly not least, and there's plenty more, but this is just the highlights, is our youth efforts. I hope you'll be able to join us on Tuesday, November 19th at the Suburban Collection Showplace in Novi for My Career Quest. We're expecting 8,000 students again this year. We had, I think, 6,700 students register in the first 2 days of registration last week. But that's just one example of the efforts underway for youth career exploration celebration. Oakland County Manufacturing Day will take place on Friday, October 4th. We have 31 companies opening their doors to nearly 1,000 Oakland County students for tours. This summer, we hosted our I Am Pontiac initiative. I know Commissioner Powell has been engaged with that. We placed 120 Pontiac youth in paid internships this summer where they have the chance to work in the community, earn a wage, and receive job mentoring and shadowing as part of their summer experience. So a lot of really incredible work underway by the workforce development team and really the extraordinary staff at the 6 centers who make things
I just had a highlight, but I said in my comment with that program.
Okay. With regard to quality of place, we already talked a little bit about the Pontiac revitalization momentum, and also the fact that we're exploring options for the U.S. Center for Advanced Manufacturing in Pontiac. I should mention more downtown development in other areas. We've expanded the Oakland County Main Street program now to 27 communities, and we've been doing a lot of work supporting the local downtown development authorities. Also, we just received a new EPA grant for brownfield development. We'll continue to do a lot this coming year in terms of local small business support. There'll be we'll launch our small business shopping on November 1st, and we'll have various other events to support the small business and provide training and workshops and other types of services for businesses. We have a range of things going on, including more work on green spaces, trails, the No-Haz program. The transit program is expanding to do some new routes and stops. And we're moving to, increase our accessible coverage in the coming year. And Sean mentioned tourism. We submitted a RFP out earlier this month, and we hope to have that finalized before the end of this fiscal year on this tourism and attraction initiative. And this is going to be used to assess our tourism and attraction assets and develop a new strategy to best promote the county. And last, I just wanted to mention regional collaboration. This is so we've got tourism, regional collaboration. So, and if you look within the county, we are trying to do more. Obviously, we're back in person. We're trying to do more events, more forums, more trainings that promote collaboration all across the county within the cities, villages, and townships. And so this includes things like the annual property showcase, where we talk about all our properties and available, the planners gatherings that we do on a regular basis to promote training in various areas. And we're now planning to renew the quarterly partner meetings to bring everybody together to keep people on the same page across the community. Externally, we've also, in the last few years, been working much more closely with our partners and adjacent counties, cities, whatever, that includes MEDC, the Detroit Regional Partnership, international chambers. Okay. So for example, we did a study on EV charging stations with Region 10 a couple of last year, and this year we're focusing again, gotten together to do the defense study that I already mentioned. We're also working together in BTM Michigan 2025. And then very importantly, we're expanding Project Diamond, as Don mentioned, to Wayne and Macomb County, and they're getting much more active in that. And also, of course, there's GEM, that's the Global Epicenter of Mobility. We received that $52 million as a Southeast Michigan a couple of years ago, and so we're working together to spend the money to promote our mobility cluster. So I think it still leaves a little time for questions, so I'll stop here. And any questions?
Thank you.
Oh, we got
I'm
the
gonna
order.
start with Commissioner Long.
Oh, y'all gotta hit y'all button.
Yeah, I
There's
was-
4 y'all ahead of y'all too. I'm just playing.
So thank
But I
you.
was letting y'all know it's
Commissioner Long
4
was
of us.
first, so
Yes.
go ahead, Commissioner Long.
So thank you, that was a great presentation, and your department certainly is
very busy with and offer a lot of programs. So that's kind of my point on if this could be like a friendly suggestion, and it might be for public communications, but, so I do get some calls, you know, from small businesses and stuff once in a while and stuff, and you guys offer so much, so I do refer them to you. But once in a while, could we get possibly the Board of Commissioners, media ready, like on these small business workshops that we can post on our Facebook? I mean, I just think we could promote it. I do get a lot of calls to do with economic development. And I would personally like something, I think most of my fellow commissioners would, if because we could post that and it might reach some more people also, but
I think we would love that.
there's just so many different programs. I don't know them all when people call, so I refer them to whatever department I think is correct. But there's just a lot of different, and I try to post things when I know it, like after finance or econ and something's coming up, I'll write it down and do the best I can. But it would be really nice to have something with the, a photo from you folks that we can just put right on Facebook saying this is happening, this is for small businesses workshop that we could post and promote also. Because I don't think the general public know how much your department's doing. I mean, there is so much to offer for businesses in Oakland County and help and support that I just think, we're underselling it because there are so many different programs, because I have to think like, oh yeah, there is something, when I get a phone call, but I just would like to promote it for you also. So that was just a suggestion. I just, then I think maybe it would be busier, some of these workshops, it could be, but I don't know. It'd be easier for us to promote sometimes on Facebook than people trying to go to the OakGov and try to find the spot to find stuff, in my opinion. So that's just
something we could certainly collaborate with you on.
Yeah.
And we could reach out to board staff about how to do that effectively.
Okay.
And that's something we've been grappling with, is there's this onslaught of programs at the local, state, federal level, and we want to make sure that we're always curating these programs for our companies, and we've been doing inventories of all these programs to try to keep up. But we should communicate those to you so we can get more.
Just so we can put it out there too, because there's just you offer so much, and I think people don't realize that. There's so much here that is offered for business helps and, business help, and people are struggling, and I mean, one phone call could help them, so thank you though. You're doing a good job. Thank you.
All right, next I have Commissioner Smith Charles.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll limit my question to one since there's other people coming behind me. The thing that really stood out to me, and I don't know who to direct it to, but it was under Veteran Services. And I know folks like page numbers, so I will say page 245.
The budget.
Yeah, in the big book. What stood out to me is just, and I could be misunderstanding it in some way, but most of these line items don't really reach the veteran themselves. So obviously there's salary, there's fringe benefits, fine, that's what, those are the things that are necessary. But under operating, for example, soldier relief, 30,000 compared to, I know I compared it to like building space cost allocation, which you guys are allocated $114,000 of your budget versus what feels like a meager, when we talk about soldier relief. So perhaps you could, whoever this is, I don't see the normal veterans spokesperson.
I can answer part of that. The salaries are primarily, we have, I think it's 11 or 14 veterans counselors. Business counselors. And so their primary role is to meet with the veterans and then to help them fill out the forms to get the benefits that they are eligible for from the state and the federal. So the actual services come from the feds and the state. We help them understand what their eligibility is and how to get there, which is difficult for many veterans. So that's why the salaries are there. One of the resources, is that the funerals? Or?
Well, so I misspoke. I said business. It was benefits counselors. But so benefits counseling is a big part of the work they do. A lot of the work they do is also pursuing outside dollars, special revenue opportunities, and other grants to provide, for resource fairs and other events that bring resources to veterans. So a lot of those things don't show up in our line items, but they are part of the work that they do. They're very resource efficient, if you will.
For
Great.
example,
Where
this year
would
they
those
just received
things
530
show up?
million. They received 530 million from the state for this year's, for this coming year fiscal,
530 million?
thousands.
Like, where is it?
Sorry. I'm at 530,000.
Start using that.
530, okay.
Zeros.
That would be nice though.
Work to do. Okay,
Say we better
so
start using that money.
between now and our official budgeting approval in September, I'd like to just follow up, perhaps even, follow up, just to get a better understanding of what soldier relief is, but it sounds like more of the federal dollars are utilized to make it to those veterans and their families, not so much captured and reflected in some of these line items. So that's kind of my understanding.
So I'll defer to our finance team on how they're captured, but certainly, yes, state and federal resources are a big part of what they capture.
Now, I know that there's some items in there for funerals, that are eligible for certain funerals, and we'll pay a little bit of that.
Right.
So that's probably in the soldier, but I don't think it's the full 30,000.
Yeah, it's a great question. What I will say is, Garth and his team do a great job from a veteran's perspective. But I will also say that hiring of Tyrone in these veteran resource fairs that we've had, we have had a greater impact over the last 3 or 4 years in veteran services in getting them to come in. So it may look like from a county perspective that from a resource perspective, we're not paying very much. But to Jean's earlier point, those counselors are helping them to fill out the forms because the real dollars are with the federal government and some of the state government programs. So it's much more operationally efficient in the last 5 years than it was prior to that.
Thank you.
Okay, next I have Commissioner Powell, followed by Commissioner Cavell.
Okay, there was a comment about that company that'll be able to come in and help us let people know about all the, I guess, commercial properties we have or whatever. Is that just the county of what we own, or is that to help all CVTs with that tool that we're working to invest in?
So it would be all CVTs, also all CVTs in Oakland County.
Okay.
And essentially our job would be to assess the best properties, figure out what needs to be promoted, what due diligence needs to be done on those sites on the infrastructure standpoint, from looking at roads, electrical, everything in between, and then figuring out what we can put up on that website to promote and put some dollars behind getting out there.
Okay, thank you.
And I should add that there's money available to help actually fix up those sites through the state and through the DRP right now. So that once we identify and know more about the sites, we have a better ability to help guide them to potential financial help.
Got it. Okay, thank you for the expungement numbers, but is there any way we can get that list broken down by zip code so we know exactly how many people in our zip codes we have helped with that expungement?
Yes.
I think that'd be great for all of us commissioners to talk about that, because we hired a person to assist in that, and we need to know those stats. So that's the question I had. Veterans outreach. Because I know things is kind of tightening up on budgets here, will we still be able to do a lot of the outreach that has been brought in the last couple years, as far as making sure we stay in touch with our veterans and going out there, not necessarily them always coming to us? So a lot of the outreach that has been done in the past, that's one part of the question. And then the second part is, I had a couple veterans call and they needed some assistance. And from my understanding, it'll be like a month and a half before they'll get help. So if we backlogged, how are we addressing the backlog?
So there's 2 points to that. So the one thing we are doing is learning to be more efficient with our resources in terms of outreach to veterans. So we have been leveraging some internal research staff to run the numbers and figure out what zip codes and what areas of the county our veterans reside in, and then target our marketing to them. What we found out was we have a lot of veterans coming from the Waterford and Pontiac communities naturally, given the fact that we're situated here, but we've started to work on looking at different corners of the county and different places where we know there's veterans population, but we're not seeing the turnout, right? So we have been doing that more. And then as it relates to availability, I know one of the things that our team has been exploring is moving beyond traditional work hours and looking at how we can extend staff's time and availability for veterans that may work a 9 to 5 and need to get here after 5 o'clock and access services. We've been looking at a number of alternatives to what we do now.
Great.
So let me say this, Commissioner Powell. Our success with the resource fairs is creating a backlog with our counselors. So the pipeline is more robust on the front end.
Okay.
And people are realizing the services. So it's a good
I love
thing.
it. I'm all about it, so.
But what's happening now is we don't have enough counselors.
Okay.
Because we're reaching the 58,000 veterans that live inside.
So it sounds like y'all may be coming to us possibly if we need any assistance in that area possibly.
We always like to try to be operationally efficient, and so we're trying some other things first before we come and ask for more money at the trough.
Okay, y'all hear that, colleagues? It's on our radar. Okay. That urban development grant, once I guess y'all get that going, can y'all make sure y'all share information with us?
Absolutely.
And then the vendor event we had down in Novi, I wanted to ask, are we trying to do something North Oakland County in regards to the minority vendor event that we hosted that was over, I think like 300-400 people attended. I went, it was a great event, and I just was wondering, are we planning to maybe do one, even if it's not this year, just will we be doing one maybe mid Oakland County?
It's a purchasing event, so
it
that's
is.
with M&B, that's not economic development, although our economic development team is there. And we will look to rotate that around. We had it at the Showplace last year, and we'll look to have it probably central or.
That's why I said mid to, got it, okay. Thank you for that, and then my last thing I wanted to do is highlight. So Jennifer talked about the internship program for the students in the summer. Well, guess what? Some of those kids that worked at City Hall ended up landing jobs in departments, and they're making, I think, 20 plus an hour. I think one girl making like 23, 25. So that program is doing exactly what we need to do. And I know I only had an update on one, but I know we probably did more than that. But for the most part, hey, we helping somebody in that space that did an internship and ended up landing a real job. So I want to thank you for your work with that, and I just wanted to put that, and that includes my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Commissioner Cavell, we're running a little bit behind. I got two people who want to ask questions. You're one of them. So
Sorry, Cavell.
go right ahead.
A long time.
Why do you always say that for me? That's
It is
I took up a lot of time. I'm sorry,
No
Cavell.
comment.
okay. I think I have a few quick answer questions, but one I just wanted to ask. Jennifer talked a lot about apprenticeships and how that's been going. Have we had any conversations or thoughts about helping people do ESOPs or co-ops as people transition out of owning small businesses, boomers trying to retire and sell their business, to allow those to be owned by the workers as a co-op or an ESOP?
So we've done some recent work with Lawrence Tech University on their collaboratory. I forget the new name of it.
Centropolis.
The Centropolis, for folks that are either retiring out of the autos or out of transition out of the autos, and how do we create entrepreneurship opportunities for them, employment opportunities for them. So those are in some early discussions. The State of Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity is also engaged in that conversation. It comes down to resources, really, at the end of the day, but there are some conversations underway in that space.
Those aren't ESOPs. You're helping people be entrepreneurial, right? That's different than an ESOP or co-op transaction.
Yes,
Okay.
we do have the terminology that we use is work experience, as opposed to the ESOP model. for adults. So we will often offer them a short-term, 6-week or 8-week work experience opportunity to help make that transition. So a bit of a different model, but similar in quality, similar in experience, but a little bit of different parameters to it with the federal dollars that we have.
I would also add that through the GYM initiative, which Jean touched on, we are working with partners like U of M and other regional stakeholders, and Jennifer has been a leader in this work, but working on helping to transition companies that we know are more the traditional automotive space into looking at opportunities for succession planning or looking at what's next in that business. So that's also something that we're doing.
Okay, great. I'd love to talk more about the ESOP co-op thing. I'll reach out, Don. The second thing was Project Diamond expanding into Wayne and Macomb counties. They're paying us for that, right? This isn't some sort of mutual aid or whatever that deal is. There is compensation for Oakland County using Oakland County time and resources?
You got a good ear, Commissioner Cavell, because when that was stated, I had the same thought in my mind. We are not doing anything. We are not using our funds for Wayne County or Macomb County. They are using funds. They were invited and they are participating with Project Diamond that was developed here in Oakland County. But they are using their own ARPA funds, their own general fund program. This program has now become, as Dom mentioned, a statewide program. It's part of the governor's 3-prong infrastructure for innovation. And it was started here with you all commissioners supporting and appropriating the dollars. And it has now become not only statewide known, but is also nationally recognized by Eric Schmidt, who used to be the former CEO of Google, has identified Project Diamond and their think tank group in a report that was released July 24th, identifying Project Diamond as one of those projects that needs to be adopted across the country. But to your point, we are not spending any Oakland County dollars with either of those counties.
But we get it.
Thank you. And then the last question I had is, I think we clicked over that slide, but MEDC eliminating their international trade department, what does that, could you speak on that for a second and what impacts that has for our economic development team?
We don't know yet, and they don't know yet. They had planned to sort of potentially get a contractor to take on their international trade responsibilities, but I had a call from today and I don't think they really have figured out exactly what's going on, but one possibility is that localities might have some more money to do some of the activities themselves. But we're just following that to see where they go on that and how we can benefit from it, because Oakland County companies have been perhaps the greatest beneficiary of this program, because so many have taken advantage of the STEP dollars to travel or to attend the international missions that they have.
And more importantly, sell their products.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rahman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're already late on time, so I'm gonna try to keep this brief. I have more questions than we have time, but one quick one here on expenditure, salaries and fringe are up, 8.5%, 6% for fringe. Where is that distributed overall in the department, do you know? Is there one area that's kind of seeing lion's share of that, or is that equally distributed?
You know, wait, if I can just be of assistance. If you go to page 69, in the front of the big book, what you're gonna see is the breakdown of staffing and economic development, actually on page 70. And you'll see the growth and the dips and trends in economic development broken down between administration, airport, veteran services, and that may answer your question. It's on page 70 towards the bottom.
Okay, I will take a look on time for that. Thank you for that. And my second question, and this may be a Sean question. I know we had talked as far as our BOC staff for special projects, we're gonna kick some of that over to Sean and his team. Is that reflected on here? And maybe I just easily missed it when I was going through, but I know things like, Winter Blast.
It's a great question. I would have to maybe ask Michael Andrews I don't believe it's reflected yet in the budget.
Correct. That's my understanding.
That's a true statement. It's not reflected yet.
Okay.
And I asked to make sure that in the line item in our budget, that it specifically call out that these are sponsorship programs for the VOC.
Okay.
That way, we're not dipping into this fund for something else, some other event that we might have over there that it's designated for the sponsorships or the events.
And those 4 events
Yeah.
are.
Ask and you shall receive, right? Yeah.
We'll take care of the budget amendment on either wrap up or on the board meeting.
And they'll be in that budget amendment.
It's on, it's scheduled to go on the website.
Yeah.
So is there opportunity, and we can have a conversation offline, but as far as discussing what those events are, if there is anything as a board we decide we wanna add to that, is there an opportunity to do that, or?
I think there's an ongoing discussion with leadership at the executive's office
Okay,
to continue.
okay, so we'll get that wrapped up here before we approve the final budget? Is
Oh,
that?
absolutely, yeah. And then if there's identified things where maybe it's not this year, we'll start to have that discussion to lead into next year. It's gonna be ongoing, essentially, which is a good thing.
Yeah, because what happens is we have some idea and it grows.
Sure.
And the point at which it grows, that it's gonna be ongoing all the time and it is an economic development kind of thing, that's when it bounces over. And we've
Yeah.
never done this before, so this time we've got 4 projects that's kind of happened with.
And those specific 4 have kind of met unofficial criteria that it is an economic development impact for all of Oakland County.
Correct.
And then as we take on new projects that we identify might do that, we're gonna obviously have to talk with Brian and Sean and all that to say, does this meet certain KPIs in order to switch it over to a department budget?
Okay.
Anything else, Commissioner? Nope. Okay.
Just to follow up on Aj's about employees, in the very beginning, you guys talked about vacancies. How many, had 3? 8? We had 3, and 2.
2 GF and the other are special revenue.
So what are we doing with all this work? Are we looking to fill those? Are we?
The 3 come from grants, from our Economic Development Corporation who owns those 3 vacancies have been on that for years. So I don't anticipate those getting backfilled, but Jennifer could speak to her 3.
Sure, so we have 3 currently, and again, because we're special revenue, we're cautious around filling positions. One of those will likely be positioned or posted after the new HR system rolls out, so I would anticipate we have 2 vacancies that we're sitting on while we watch availability of funds longer term.
And the other 2 are GF, and one of them is in the process of being hired for a veteran counselor that will help maybe reduce some of the backlog we talked about earlier. And then the other one has to do with Oakland 80 position. So we anticipate. Thank you for the question.
Okay, any of the other commissioners? Commissioner Hoffman?
Quick question. Thank you for your excellent presentation. Thanks for everything you do, especially in the jobs area and training. I saw a line item up there that said historical preservation. What are we doing for historical preservation?
We have an architect, actually, 1.5 architects on staff that help out with various projects. Some of it's historical. We had, for example, we had a fire in Holly a few years ago, and so they've been working to work with some of the businesses that were affected there to restore those businesses, various plans. They've worked with a lot of the Main Street communities in terms of some of the designation as historic properties and this kind of thing, and also to help with the drawings
And they've done things like help communities look at things like facade improvements and making sure that they're historically accurate for the buildings that they're working on.
Okay, what about actually promoting historical preservation? Like I noticed in Pontiac, they've repurposed a couple schools, one's for the Pontiac Auto Museum and the other one's for
multi-use.
Is that the Webster School? I can't remember.
Yes.
Webster.
That one. What, are we doing anything towards that?
our teams have been very involved with those stakeholders, with all the funders, with all the, you know, the folks that are collaborating on the development of those facilities to look at what the potential use could be and bring in, you know, we typically act as a convener in those ways. So we're bringing all the parties together to look at how something can be redeveloped or reused in a lot of cases. And our Main Street group is very, very active in that space.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Any of the other commissioners? I just have a question about affordable housing and how it fits into the planning piece of it that you were talking about early in your presentation, Dom. There are a number of communities where developers are wanting to build things and the community's kind of saying, okay, you can, but a goal for some of the broader leadership is we need to be finding ways to slot affordable housing into these developments. I can think of one in my own community where, you know, they wanna build these condos, whatever, 5 stories on a major corner, right? And the city's saying, yeah, we want you to come, and the developer's saying, yeah, we want to, and the residents are not happy because they see all the things associated with that. Whereas when I look at it, I say, well, that's kind of a good place for housing, but I don't wanna see just $4,000 a month apartments there. I'd like to see some affordable units as part of that. So how, that's a long question to say, how is the county participating in those conversations so that we are looking at incentivizing communities to be open to these kinds of discussions?
So in large part, we do defer to the communities themselves and the developers that are active in those communities. I will say we do spend a lot of time coordinating with Jill Robinson and the Treasurer's Office to look at what they're doing with the land bank. And then we also spend a lot of time coordinating with our folks in neighborhood housing and development to talk about how they're using things like their housing trust fund to incentivize certain types of development in the way you're talking. And so those are some of the things that we do to try to coordinate and encourage that activity. And then just you know, having our ears to the ground and understanding where there might be resources to bolster those efforts.
So if I wanted to reach someone in your department to have that conversation with my local community, who is that person?
I think it would start with me, and then there would be different people that we might engage. We might engage Brad Hansen, for instance, to talk about brownfield aspects. We would engage different folks as needed.
I should add, though, we are in the process right now of working with the board in terms of developing a policy for TIFs in terms of so that concept is included in some way so that at least the area doesn't agree to sort of block potential housing, low income housing. We're looking at ways we could include that as a criteria when we take a look at whether to approve various TIF requests and, you know, the amount.
Okay, we don't have to belabor it, but I just wanted to kind of know where to go with that, because I'm in a community where we don't want those people coming here sometimes is sort of the attitude, and we need more mixed use because we need space for people to live that are working in our community. So I want to have that longer offline conversation. Here's the place to start. Okay, Commissioner Powell.
I was just gonna say, I didn't know if you knew this, but I do know that a lot of the trust fund funded projects that we get involved in, they have been at a 80-20 or 70-30 type thing. Nothing's, from my understanding, it's the national goal that they're not supporting nothing, you know, 50% or more, and making it more diverse for that reason, right? Yeah, okay. Thanks, I don't know if you knew that, Ron.
Okay, anybody have anything else for this group? We're running a little behind, but it was a good discussion, so thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We'll just, do we need a break or should we just keep going? I think everybody who needs to.
Keep going.
Presentations.
Keep going.
Can we limit the presentation to about 20 minutes? Because I think if that runs long.
That one was longer than most of them.
We should have had management and budget like 2 hours. Dedicated, laser focus.
I don't mind going all day.
They live this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get back to my agenda.
I don't mind, the problem is it's down. I got each one, sorry, got longer and longer.
What'd you say?
I just did.
I'm out of it today, I won't lie. Yeah, I'm a little out of it today.
Just by the end of it, just like.
No, I was watching all night, yeah, so that's probably
Management
why.
budget, in the categorical, it's page 43.
Back when she got.
And in the, it is page 180.
Hey, hurry up, Joe. I think there's a healthy.
Yeah, I know, I told my wife.
Yeah.
My wife, they don't even like, you had to watch it, me relaying it wasn't.
I'm all about C-SPAN.
Oh, yeah.
It was so nice to just do it on
Wasn't it the one?
I cared before we
I was
started.
excited too, that's what I watched it on Flash, right?
Yeah.
No interruption.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we didn't even talk about it.
Thank you for the
Law
healthy
and Order
food.
video.
That was like the best part of it, that was
They
like.
actually had some nice, they had some nice videos.
Yeah, they
I
did.
liked all of them.
I watched both.
I watched part of the.
People, yeah, people said they watched it. My sister was watching it on my camera, and she's so far over the right. She said she couldn't stand up there until Hillary Clinton had to shut it off. Yeah,
It did so good.
they hate her, you know, they hate, my
It was
sisters
so
hate her.
good how people's
I know.
emotions
Yeah.
get caught up in them.
Well, some of you don't like, I mean, they don't like Republicans either, they'll shut it off, you know? She said they can't stand her, so they're like, I got it off.
We're all like hippies. I gotta just go in the other room.
Oh, I can
Hear
listen.
from
My wife gets annoyed. Oh, at the. That would be pretty cool.
It's got about 5 days.
I'm thinking, I think it's like harder. It simply comes out.
He's already, like, he's trying to live long enough. Oh,
Just to remind us that we're.
Trying to live long enough.
How you feeling?
Kamala over on the line.
I'd eat my carrots first, 'cause they're so crunchy.
Yeah.
All right, just wanna remind the group, we have some snacks in the corner.
Healthy today, too, healthier.
Healthy snacks, yep. So, we have the crowd at the end. They've been here for every minute of every budget hearing so far, and we really appreciate that, so. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, commissioners, for those. I'm Brian Leffler, the CFO of the county. Lynette?
Cheryl Johnson, Deputy CFO.
Michael Womack, Equalization Officer.
Paula Reyes, Chief of Purchasing.
So as you can probably see, we are operating kind of like on a team approach. This is under management budget, but earlier, as you mentioned, we are really looking to all the other departments and elected officials as our customers inside fiscal and management budget and wanting to provide you as much information as possible during these presentations. Now the spotlight is on us, so I'm gonna turn it over to these folks.
Good afternoon, thank you for your time. So we took the format that we worked out together with the revenues and expenditures for management and budget, and then I took one step further and broke it down by division. So we're gonna go through that relatively quickly, I'll point out a few things, and then we'll move on from there. So I think we'll be making up some time today on us, because we don't have a lot of like flashy stuff that we do the numbers, and that's, you got the flashy stuff a couple weeks ago. So the way I did this is the first slide is gonna be management and budget as a whole, and then you're gonna see equalization, fiscal services, and purchasing, and those are the three main divisions of management and budget. And you will find those on page 43 of the small book, and then page 180 of the big book. Yeah, I'll talk about the positions when I get there. So you can see here, we stay, overall, management and budget revenue stays relatively consistent. You know, there's a few smaller things in there, we don't collect a lot of the taxes or things like that. And most of the revenues that we do collect, what you'll see here, the bulk of it is equalization from the contracts from the communities. And then we also collect some things that we collect and then they go in our overhead and it gets redistributed to all the departments because it's just easier to put it in fiscal services, like the rebates for the cards that purchasing does. If they do, a purchase card, if we get rebates from those, then we put them in purchasing and spread those back out to the departments. Because it's easier to do that than try and spread them along with everybody that's purchasing them. So you'll see the equalization revenues, actuals compared to the adopted and amended. Pretty consistent, it continues to go up. We've had lots of conversations about the rates to the communities that we provide for our equalization services. So we can address that during questions, but I think we all know how that goes. So fiscal services, you will see kind of consistent. The bump that you'll see in 22 is from an interest rate payment that came into fiscal. And then in purchasing, now I do want to point out purchasing, you're only going to see from fiscal 21 to 25 because purchasing prior to that was actually located in the compliance area of the budget. So in fiscal 21, it moved over to the M&B area. So you'll see that those rebates continue to go up. There obviously wasn't a lot in 2021, obviously nothing in 2021, as we recovered from the pandemic. And then as we kind of started focusing on P cards and rebates for things like that, rebates as we've talked about for using your credit card, that's where you see the expanded revenues in the purchasing area. So the next slide, again, overall expenditures, pretty consistent for management and budget. We use staff and we do a few professional service things, but the bulk of our expenditures are staff and printing reports. And then the way these work is we did the overall, so you'll see the overall trend over the space of the years, and then you'll see we've broken it down by category. Again, this is familiar, you've seen it in all of the other departments that we're doing. We stay relatively consistent. There is a slight dip in 21. It's kind of twofold. One, purchasing was not in this area, and the other is recovering from the pandemic. Equalization, their expenditures, they come in lower than adopted on a regular basis. Nice job, Michael. And you'll see with equalization, the bulk of their expenditures are staff. It's staff, they're out in the streets, they're out in the, in the communities doing their equalization thing. Fiscal services, we've stayed very consistent, again, reporting and staff calculating. You'll see here as you look at this slide, again, the bulk of our stuff is personnel, and you'll see a little higher level of internal support because we do use a lot of the IT services for the stuff that we do. Purchasing division. Overall, management and budget is just a very consistent, stable area. Our things don't change too much. Purchasing division, they also, again, this is only the 21 to 25 because 20 is in compliance. So I want to stop on this slide because I really neglected to mention earlier in the big book on page 70, all of the slides and all the data from all of these slides that we put together is all data out of the books. So we tried to make sure that everything that we were pulling out to show you for each of the departments was coming from a consistent source. So every department's personnel positions, they could be general fund, general purpose, special revenue, enterprise fund, but it's all coming from this graph that you'll find starting on page 68 which our friends in HR put together for us every year so that we can put it in the book. It's a 5-year history of the trends of everybody's staffing. And then in here, you'll see the breakdown by divisions. So when Commissioner Rahman had a question about economic development, you can see that the airport was added, their staffing was added in '23. So this is a really good resource to help digest. It was kind of difficult to put in a graphic to help you understand it, but all the graphic data is in the books. And on that, I wanna say we do have some vacancies in management and budget. The bulk of those are fiscal and equalization. Fiscal currently has 4 positions that we have posted out, looking for applications, and we have 1 more that's getting ready to come on board. One of the things that happens in fiscal is, so I advertised for 2 supervisors. Well, I promoted them from within. So now I have to advertise for 2 accountants. So some of the vacancies look like they might be a little longer, but it's really just shifting jobs as we move people around in the spaces within fiscal services. Let me see what else I have. I think that's all I have. I'm gonna turn it, well, for now, I'm gonna turn it over to my friend Michael to talk about his equalization key priorities. I'll just hold on.
Well, I'd like to first thank you for the privilege and honor to be able to serve Oakland County as equalization officer. It is a tremendous privilege. To be able to work with you all in this capacity is a big honor. To work with the administration, the executive office is a tremendous privilege, but also the equalization team members. The leadership there and the staff is just unquestionably just some of the finest professionals I've ever met and had the privilege to work with. I came today with Tracy Jones, who's one of the 3 chiefs we have here. And I don't do the heavy lifting over there. I mean, you could easily survive without me, as you've seen, because you went without an officer for almost a year. And Tracy was one of the 2 people that were able to do all that heavy lifting. It's just an incredible group of people. So I don't say that lightly. So as I go through with some of our priorities and what we've done since I've been here, I really want to tell you what a great privilege it's been to work with them. Some of the things we've worked on, and I'll be real quick because as Cheryl said, she's only given me the reins for a little bit, it's temporary. But at any point you ever wanted to hear more, our door is always open, and I do believe in transparency and having a high level of quality of assessment services because of that, because I do take any kind of criticism, constructive or negative criticism. That's why we have the equalization e-newsletter that we put out there. We started putting out communications to all of our community leadership, and I talked about that the first year that we were gonna do that, and it turned into an e-newsletter that goes out to equalization newsletter, digital, that goes out to anybody that wants to subscribe to it. They go on our website on the front page and can put their email in, because we put information in there that's really useful for anybody, from forecasted consumer price index that we believe that'll be there for the next year for taxable value increases, to what's going on for our staff there, to what's going on with building permit information, sale price information. We really made it more for anybody, residents, taxpayers, and the leadership of the communities. But some of the things that we're still looking at for improving is quality of assessment services, increasing transparency, expanding community outreach, and really ultimately ensuring public trust in the services we provide. One of the first things we've been working on since I've been here is looking at a mission and vision statement that embodies what the county's visions and core values are and what we're trying to do for best practices as an equalization assessing office. And one of the things we did do with collaboration here was put together a mission and vision statement. And that's on our website, and that's posted throughout our office, and that was a collaborative effort with our administration looking at the core values here, but also with our staff and looking at other best practices. And the reason it took a year and a half is because we had a lot of classes, as you know, where we invited leaderships of other organizations in and helped them understand how to do abatements and land divisions, and helped educate them so that they didn't have those deficiencies locally. And we brought those topics up about what they were doing with their missions and visions for doing, zoning and land divisions. And we collected that information And we shared that with our staff, and that was a big effort of ours because everybody embodies that in our office. We have regular meetings with assessors and others every 3 to 4 months still, so that we can go through challenges that are going on in our world of assessing and equalization, but also for the communities that we're serving. Not just our communities that we have contracts with either, but communities that we don't have contracts with, because we have equalization responsibilities with every community in Oakland County. And we share whatever we have with everybody, and we try to share those best practices that they have with the other communities we come in contact with. I already talked about.
I'm gonna ask you just to move it along a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe hit a couple of highlights here.
We still do a lot of training. We're promoting a lot of opportunities for staff. One of the things we've done over the last couple of years that we recently, we just found out about it. I sent 3 of our members up to the Michigan Assessors Association 2 weeks ago for leadership training. We had been nominated for some of the changes we made for Distinguished Jurisdiction Award and
I know Vanna.
yeah.
I
So-
got recruited.
So Oakland County Equalization was awarded with the Distinguished Jurisdiction Award for standards of practice, professional practice, and other things that we put in place. Really earned by our staff, and really I owe it to you for helping us gain that. If it wasn't for you all, our staff wouldn't have been able to do what we did. So I really want to thank you all for that. As you can read a lot of what we're doing, but we are doing as much as we can with technology to improve the services we're doing. We have implemented things, and we are going through, like I talked about last year, Pivot Point, using things like CoStar, using things like a lot of our staff have become appraiser licensees and have joined the Board of Realtors, and we're using a lot of those technology things to improve efficiencies, quality of improvements, doing a lot more community outreach. But we are open to any kind of suggestions that anybody else has. But we're looking at best practices, not just in our own areas, but other compeer areas to increase our services.
3 things I was gonna say. The e-newsletter that Michael talked about, he worked with DBC to make it more efficient so it gets out earlier, which is a great collaboration. All the stuff that he does is really helpful for the county when we go apply for bond ratings. That type of information, whether it's part of the input of coming up with, okay, how does Oakland County rank compared to other peer counties? The last thing though, when I was listening to the economic development, they were talking about the GIS importance. I'm gonna, that's right now for one of the things that my job is doing is making sure that there's no silos. If there's a collaboration in terms of GIS, and because he has the parcel numbers on what's vacant or if should there be tax information for a business. So I wanna put him and Dom together and say, how do we solve this? Maybe there's a better solution rather than having 2 different contracts or something like that. So this is part of our job here in the CFO, the fiscal services, is really taking these silos and then just laying on top of each other. So, but it's great to work with all the information that they do. Turn it back to.
So just a quick reminder, these are the questions that we were given, that the board was interested in answering, and I am more than happy to discuss them. One of the key priorities for fiscal services and for management and budget, I'm sure that you guys have already seen in the last week as we pull this together, is our customer service focus. It's really important to us that we start doing more of a collaborative effort, working with the departments, working with the electeds, working with the boards, and making sure that we all have access to the same information so that we can all make a quality decision. Some of the other things that we're gonna do is Brian and I have talked about reviewing our department setup and ensure that the structure supports the collaboration within the departments as well as outreach to other areas. And I wanna continue to do meetings with individual departments. I do have a couple departments that I meet with regularly, every month, every couple months. We just have a quick half hour, hey, what's going on? Here's what's on the horizon, here's what we're looking at. And those are really good for me to help stay on top of what departments are looking for. Currently, I do it with WRC, so I'm very familiar with when they're looking for bond issuances and things like that. We talk about that stuff so that we make sure that the fiscal team is on board and knows what's going on out in the county as a whole. One of the other things that you asked is how are we gonna stay balanced and fiscally responsible? For us, helping the departments understand their budget and then hold them accountable for spending I think that's a really important key, and that comes from us having those conversations with the department and not doing things very siloed. We wanna continue to create meaningful reports. You know, we've had these similar reports for a very long time. We wanna create meaningful reports that departments can use as a tool for decision-making, from anything from a clerk all the way up to a county exec elected. You know, we wanna make sure that they're able to pick up a report and find the answers that they want. And I think that's gonna come in some of the structural changes that you'll see in fiscal services and management and budget, and then some of the changes that you'll see in our reporting structure. And last but certainly not least, the question was our strategic financial planning. I'm just trying to decide if I should turn this over to Brian, because he's our strategic financial planner. But we're talking about developing and presenting an affordable, sustainable CIP plan. We all know, and we've been hearing about all the money that's required to sustain the buildings. So we're working on that, and we're trying to make sure that it's affordable and sustainable. And we're ensuring, to do that, part of what we're doing is making sure that all of our policies are up to date, that they're accurate and they're useful. So if we're trying to do something with a bond rating, we aren't trying to fight ourselves because our bond policy doesn't commingle. And lastly, obviously, remain vigilant to maintain our AAA bond ratings with Standards and Standard & Poor's and Moody's. And with that, I think that we answered your questions. I tried to keep it brief. If you have any questions, we are here and available.
Oh,
Okay,
got some names.
nobody has pushed the button.
Yeah, you gotta
there's a
hit
couple.
You know what, it's those steps, you know,
You gotta hit-
and if you're the chair, you have to go
Details.
back and.
No, I
yeah.
know.
Saves the day.
Okay, Phil, followed by Commissioner Weipert, followed by Commissioner Rahman, followed by Commissioner Hoffman. That's the
You
order
said no
that you went on.
questions.
As to the, you noted in the about the rate increases for the assessors.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, that's really noted here that that's
In the categorical?
in the categorical.
Yeah.
You pointed it out for all the years, so what, are you notifying them? Is it already planned, and you let them know?
CVTs, like.
All the CBTs, all the
Yeah.
increases for
Complaining.
the assessors?
Well, they, for the contract rates, they've already been notified what the contracts are for right now. And then we'll be getting together, starting as soon as budget season's over, and starting to work on the contracts going forward. And we'll be notifying them of what we're doing. Sure, we kept them in the loop totally throughout the process last time.
Yeah,
And we were working on them, and we'll be doing the same thing as soon as budget's over.
Yeah, to being, and also we'll have to be coming back to the board for the in compliance with the policy. So I just been working with Michael and his team to say, okay, we gotta get this started, give ourselves some time.
I mean, that's.
But that's what's nice about the e-newsletter, we keep that communication going out there, and that's what we use that for too.
Well, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Rahman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. As I mentioned, you guys are usually my favorite presentation of all, so I appreciate the transparency and the clarity on all this, especially for me being newer. It helps me understand and digest a lot of this. Couple of questions. So the first one is in terms of sustainability. Cheryl, I know you mentioned this kind of on your last slide. With ARPA and kind of like the windfall on gold now being gone, you know, we've talked a lot about deferred maintenance and a lot of our infrastructure and buildings and things like that. From a sustainability standpoint, do you see any challenges or obstacles moving forward in the foreseeable future?
So I look at it too, sustainability as one is, can we still afford it from a financial perspective? You know, we're working with Aaron on the sustainability components, how do we incorporate that? Because it's not only the initial costs that would be implemented for facilities. My next question is always, okay, what's the ongoing cost and what's the replacement value? When do we have to, like, for example, what kind of roof are we putting on, or if there's replacement? So I'm going down to those type of levels. Then even to the point where can we batch up these, say that we need all the roofs replaced at the same time? Is there better bidding? How are we looking at this? And I'm working with facilities management on that. So when I say sustainability, is that are they looking at it comprehensively, not only upfront, but long-term as well?
Okay.
And I think it was really telling when we sat through the parks meeting, you know, they talked about the parks put $4 to $6 million in to sustain their capital projects throughout the years, and the county as a whole campus was only putting in $2.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that we're looking at in the other sense of sustainability, making sure that once we do, get things to a level that we are continually investing in the ongoing sustainability of our assets.
If there was approximately 1 million square feet inside the county, what are we setting aside per square foot each year for that?
Sure.
And if there's been nothing, how do we kickstart that, but also be ready to say, okay, how are we gonna continue that going forward? So it's chunks, just baby chunks like this, but that's how we would approach it, Commissioner.
Okay. No, I appreciate it, thank you. And then the other quick question for you, this is just more in the weeds, I guess, than anything else. I'm not familiar with the commodities section, so if you could just briefly talk about that. Like I'm seeing everything from uniforms to employee footwear, and then I know meter postage is another area that has gone up. Again, not super substantially, but I'm curious, what those categories generally refer to, and then with like meter postage, what are we mailing?
So fiscal services also houses reimbursement, which is the team that does all the collection for the courts that are housed over here in the courts. So we are mailing letters out to people who owe money, people who get money, victims. They also have a substantial postage budget and equalization as they mail out the assessing notices and things like that. The big difference between a commodity and a contractual service would be a commodity is like paper for the printer, postage, things like that we just use in the normal course of business, pens, things like that. The contractual services is when we pay someone else to do it. So that's kind of the difference. So when we put, we have staff that have uniforms, that's a commodity. We don't pay someone to provide that, we provide them uniforms for them to wear. So that's kind of the difference. That's the best way to think about it.
And so which, generally from my own understanding, so like employee footwear, for instance, what type of area is that, or I don't know what?
Well, it's equalization, so their team doesn't sit behind a desk. They're out in the, in the streets in the weather, they're like postmen. Rain, shine, snow, they're out there. So there's footwear and uniforms, they have to identify themselves when they walk up to the house, they have to be identified as an equalization person and they're walking around. I don't know if you've ever had an assessor come to your house, they walk all the way around your house, they look at all the stuff. So whatever you got going on in your yard, they're walking through it. So those are the kind of things that we provide for them out of fiscal services.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's always nice to hear when a department comes in and they've spent less than they budgeted. However, with equalization, I think you mentioned we're short staff, and that's why they have not spent their whole budget. How short are we, and are we doing anything to correct the problem? And is it like a lot of occupations, hard to find somebody? I know that's a tough field.
Well, I think I'm gonna start with fiscal. So fiscal is kind of like departments that need a certification, like you have to be an accountant. And there are not a lot of people going into government accounting. The big accounting firms got out of accounting, and so there's not a pathway for someone to go into school, get out of school, go to a big accounting firm, get exposed to government, and then stay in government, which is how I got in government. And, obviously I stayed because of my passion. So there's a little bit of a challenge from the accounting side and the fiscal side, trying to get people to just look at government accounting. From the equalization side, I'll let Michael speak to that, but there are certifications in his area as well. So that's when we talk about the staffing, yes, most of our budget is staffing, but there are people that are certified and, need the level of education to do the things that they're doing.
No, I understand all that. I just wonder how difficult it is to find assessor level 1, 2, and 3, and it's.
Right now, it is difficult. When we bring in somebody, we typically bring them in as an appraiser aide. We bring them in entry level, and then we put them up, send them off to the classes. Train them up.
Okay, but how many members are we down? How many could you use?
Right, as of right now, we're fully staffed.
Yeah.
Right now, we're fully staffed. We have,
Oh, okay.
yeah, we lost some people this year to the state tax commission because they had been here a number of years and they were topped where they needed to be. And then we had a number of part-time positions that we've consolidated into full-time positions because we really can't use like summer help. I mean, by the time you train somebody 3 or 4 months out, it's time to go back to college. So we've taken those positions and we've looked at them and said, let's take that money and turn it into a full-time position. So that's why if you look at our staffing count, it went down because we've gotten rid of those positions. But every one of our positions is taken.
All right, well, that's good to know we're fully staffed because I got the impression that we were still down.
Yeah, right.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I think during this budget review with equalization and working with this team, they just reorganized or classified the positions that they had to meet the needs of trying to provide the services to the CBTs, which was what we were encouraging during this discovery process, I call it.
Yeah, and the other thing we did is, and I kind of touched on it, is we are looking at, we were very deficient on technology when I got here. So we are looking at other ways, before we increase staff, we are looking at ways of using technology and what we can do with best practice to make sure we're as efficient as possible before we just throw bodies at a problem. So we're gonna do that before we come to you and say, oh, let's have bodies. So we're looking at Pivot Point, which a lot of communities already use, like Novi. But we don't have that technology here. We're gonna use technology first and say, how can we be the most efficient with what we have? And then we'll say, okay, now do we need to staff?
All right, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Powell.
2 questions. Equalization, the personal property exemption form, what is the time frame that needs to be submitted by, or what's that time date? That form need to be submitted by?
Personal property statements have to be filed with the assessor by February 20th.
February 20th of every year, so it's from January 1st to February 20th?
No, it's February 20th. So we send them out by January 10th because we'll have a new statement every year. And then by February 20th, they have to.
So from January 10th to February 20th?
Right. And most companies will already know what assets that they're gonna, so we go out and we canvass in the late fall. And we see what assets are there and we're sending out the forms that the state tax commission is putting together for us. We send those out to people during the latter part of the year when the state tax commission gets those finalized for us. We have to send those out to everybody. But most companies that do personal property statements for companies, they have them.
Well, we have a lot of small businesses that's not aware of that process.
Well, and for small businesses, there's exemptions if they're under a certain threshold. So we notify them while we're out with those, if we believe that they could meet those thresholds, and we give them those affidavits too if we believe that they meet those thresholds.
But again, we have people who are just not aware of it. And I'm just trying to make sure they know within those dates, and I probably get this form, and I kind of help people in the small business space, because a lot of them are missing this. And even for myself, because I missed it, and that's why I keep having to pay a bill, but I need to get my form in because I qualify. But anyway, and then I just wanted to eventually, if I can, just put on the radar, I need to request a meeting with purchasing. And it's just to gain clarity for BOC projects and sponsorships and that process timing of us voting it and they getting a check. Because it's a whole delay in this. And I think as commissioners, we need to know when we helping to advocate for these people, if they didn't meet this reasonable timeline, that processing to, if they trying to get a check before, or if it's a event that they don't care if they get it before or after, that's fine. But it's a little delay and I'm confused about it and it's impacting a lot of the sponsorships that I'm dealing with. So I just need to be clear on it from both sides, and I just wanna make sure as the caucus chair that all of us board commissioners are in respect of y'all time and how y'all process things and how we get requests in. So eventually, I just want to put that on your radar whenever y'all available. That's a sidebar. Thank you.
I got one quick question.
Mr. Hoffman.
Is the exemption for personal property still 80,000? Is it gone up?
It actually went to 180,000.
It's 180 now?
True cash.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's
We can try to
180
get
to
that out
180, yeah, that's good. It's huge.
180.
Yeah, it's good.
Per jurisdiction collectively for that business.
Okay, thanks.
That's good.
Okay, anybody else? If there's no other questions from the commission, thank you very much for coming in and telling us about your department and where you're at this year and fiscal.
Idiot for you then.
You can
I
stay.
know.
Sure you do.
And I keep getting the time frame,
Better do
but you can't submit it too early, they gonna take it forward.
Right.
So now that I know, cause they.
Make sure you do it, put it on your calendar.
I'm milking out money I ain't got to, cause I be forgetting this big.
We're gonna recess for about
Oh,
10
Barbara.
minutes. We're running a little behind and we'll make up some time there. All right.
I know he's always waiting for us.
All right, we are back in session with the budget hearings. And I have to charge my car, everything's cool. Next up, we have facilities management in the budget book, the big book, it's on page 190. In the categorical, it's on page 46. And welcome.
Thank you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Ed Joss, the Director of Facilities Management. I have with me Stephanie Hunt. She is the brains behind all of our finances. If you're not aware, we manage 14 different budgets at Facilities Management. Also with us, the management team, we've got Todd Burkle, Joe Murphy, Misty Rates, and Jason Moore. And we have some slides prepared based on what we were asked to cover today. Stephanie is gonna move through those slides fairly quickly, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, and we have about 40 minutes for your group, so if you can try and cut it about 20 minutes, 25 minutes for your presentation, that'll make time for questions.
Or less. Just saying.
Yeah, he's not gonna let Bob ask any.
Okay, so this very first slide goes over the department revenues. Our department is set up with a lot of different divisions and budgets, so this looks at our general fund area. You'll notice that in 22 is where we kind of had an uptick, and that is when support services joined our department. So that is mail center, things like that revenue. That's kind of reflected right there. You'll notice the only areas we have anything really is charges for services as revenue. The next slide looks at our expenditures. You'll notice there's been an uptick, but we're kind of holding steady between 24 and 25. A lot of those changes have been due to, frankly, the economy and a lot of our expenses, if we're using vendors, they've been asking for price increases and just the cost of supplies to do repairs around the facilities. A big chunk of our expenditures also show as personnel. We have over 200 employees that we use to keep the facilities running and keep everything going for you guys. Our positions, you'll notice that we had the uptick in 23 and correlates with combining the extra division. And then we do have some open positions currently. They've just been a little more difficult to fill just with the job duties, but we are continuing to work with HR and get those positions filled. We were provided with a list of questions that you guys would like answered, which included what are our major projects included in this budget. So one major thing we are doing is creating a new division under facilities management named Capital Planning and Design, which will focus on our CIP projects. We're going to continue to focus on the downtown Pontiac project, and we are continuing our dedication to safety in the workplace for all of our staff as well as everyone here. We have some major studies that we plan to get done on ADA assessment, on energy and electrical study, campus land use master plan. And then another question was about how we're going to continue our sustainability initiatives. And we are expanding the recycling program that we were kicked off this year, which has been going well. EV charging stations, as was briefly mentioned, we're continuing to move that way. We're going to continue with the acquisition of fuel efficient vehicles and integrating electric or hybrid vehicles as we are able to get them from the dealers. We are continuing to plant additional trees. There was an initiative for planting so many trees each year, and we're continuing to move forward with that to keep our green space around the campus. We are also getting some equipment to be able to screen our own soil, so we're not purchasing soil, we can use the soil that's around the campus and make it good for us to use. And then we're also doing some sanitary and storm line repairs. One last major thing was we were asked about how will our budget support the maintenance and improvement of county buildings and infrastructure. We entered a request for an FM CAMS enhancement project. CAMS is our collective asset management system that we currently use, also known as CityWorks. We are trying to expand that to track all of our assets individually down to the cost that it's taking for us to do every little thing, so that we can better prepare for replacements based on how much we're putting into a piece of equipment to get it repaired, and also be able to better predict the maintenance that is needed on it. If it's continuing to go through belts, we know and can track that and be able to make savings repairs in a timely fashion. This will also improve our field staff's availability of having information at their hands in the field. They can know exactly how they are supposed to perform preventative maintenance on these pieces of equipment. So we have had a lot of retirements taking place, and we have a lot of new fresh workforce coming in. And that way they're familiar. We have a lot of buildings and a lot of equipment to get familiar with. They can walk up to a piece of equipment and be able to perform all of the required preventative maintenance without missing something that could be crucial. So that is one big thing we are looking to move forward with to keep our facilities up and running and moving good for us.
Okay.
And that was really our presentation.
Oh, all right, good. Let's back on track.
Set a record.
Right to the point, right to the
I
point.
see questions from Commissioner Smith Charles.
Hey, I raised my hand just preemptively
Because you had to beat me.
before I had a question. First of all, excellent 8 slides. I just want to say that gave me life. And I guess my one question that comes up, and of course we know how to reach you all. We see you often for those of us who are on economic development infrastructure. But like coming into the county campus today, and it could be just off a few degrees. It could be off just a few degrees, but there's like a sign that's a little, it looks misplaced to me or off kilter to me. And so things like that, when you notice something, who might be a go-to for the commissioners to just bring to the attention of someone? I know I text you all the time, but if there's someone else that funnels that, or if there's a hotline, even for staff.
Yeah, so there is, so yes, I think every one of you have my cell phone number. But Stephanie, I think you're about to say, but we do have, Stephanie mentioned the CityWorks work order system, right? All requests come to us through that system so that the task can be assigned to the appropriate people so we can react to it as quickly as possible. But I think there is also a hotline so that if you are driving and you pull over and park and wanna call, then you can call the hotline and then we have someone internally, right, that will enter the work order.
Okay.
But every department, every division has a designated person within their group that is assigned and has access to that work order system to put in those requests.
Okay, great. Is that, and that's employee facing? So it's not a number I should ask you to give me right now. I'll just ask maybe through the chair that it could be distributed to the 19.
Start looking around campus when I drive in more.
We're also
Drive and
working on
get
the
there.
sign, I've already got it taken care of, so it will be fixed.
Nice.
I look at his flowers.
What did we do before we could text everybody?
I know.
All right,
Flowers.
was that it, Commissioner? Anybody else? Commissioner Gershenson.
So maybe I missed it,
Charlie's next, I think.
but where is the money and what's the plan for all the energy efficiencies for all our buildings that Erin presented with her study?
Right, so there are other studies associated with that, right? So like also mentioned in here was the energy study. We're working on assessments for the master plan for EV charging. The list goes on and on and on. And a lot of those efforts are being planned for the CIP, but more at the bond that we're looking at.
At the what?
At the bond that we're
At the
looking into.
bond, okay, so that's the answer, is really the bond. Yeah, cause I'm talking about all those buildings she mentioned, you know, when it was like a $700 million estimate. I just don't hear about it, I just wondered where it went.
Yeah.
So that's maybe what you're thinking is a
It hasn't
bond.
been forgotten, we're every day talking about those projects, but I mean, I think everyone knows like the dollar amount that you just mentioned isn't something that we
Right,
have,
yeah.
so
I
we.
just, it's been so shocking, I haven't been able to forget it for a couple of years.
So we're having daily conversations with the management and budget team on how we're gonna fund many of those things.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, sorry, Commissioner Cavell, I didn't realize you had plugged in, and take all the time you want.
Oh,
Yeah, don't tell him that. Just
That was
don't say.
kind of a joke, but you know.
Just don't tell him to hurry.
I'm sure you have a
this
good question.
Yeah, thank you. I was hoping, hey, Ed and team, I was hoping to just sort of on what Commissioner Gershenson was saying. Can you speak more to the CIP? Particularly, you had mentioned in your presentation the capital planning and design, I guess, subdivision. How much do you anticipate that I guess unit to cost? How much do we plan to invest in the CIP? Where do we want that CIP funding to come from? All those sorts of things.
Say a position? Lot of questions. So I'll try to remember them all, not necessarily in order, but just a quick history. So many years ago, within facilities management, there used to be two groups, an engineering group and a planning group. And when the economy tanked and there was no money going into the CIP, the engineering group that focused on the CIP was almost idle. And the planning group was overwhelmed with all the work that they had to do. And there was an opportunity for some synergies. There was background that with a little bit of cross-training, we could take some of that workload from the planning group, shift it to the engineering group. And so what we ended up doing was, at that time, was combining the planning group and the engineering group, and it became planning and engineering. It's very common for organizations to have two groups, one that works on, you know, all projects other than CIP, and then one to focus strictly on CIP. And of course, now that things have turned and we have a lot of CIP stuff coming down the road, it made sense to go back to that traditional model of having a group to focus strictly on CIP and then everything else in the planning group. So Misty is leading that capital planning and design group to focus on all things CIP. And she shifted from the planning and engineering group and took some senior level staff with her. So I think there's only one new position that we're gonna create to help support that. And other than that, like right now, there isn't really a need for additional funding.
That's good.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was very helpful. And then also learning how much we have in the CIP for this fiscal year and the origin of those funds.
Yeah, so I believe, is it 6 million for 5 million for this year, right? And the funding for the CIP comes from the building improvement fund, the building fund. Which is where it always has come from. There's no change in that. So, yeah, so that's what we're working with is 5 million this year, which is, you know, an increase from what we've had in the past, which in the past I had mentioned when things were really bad it was 0, and then on average it was like 2 million or less. So you know, last couple of years and moving forward, we'll be able to get more done with just the CIP.
And I would just like to stop you there for a second and have Mr. Leffler weigh in again, because I'm not sure everybody's clear at the numbers that we've been operating at and what we should be operating at to be operating effectively on taking care of our assets. So I'd just like you to,
Sure.
you and I have talked about it, but I'm not sure everybody on the commission has heard this.
So as Cheryl Johnson had mentioned, as a comparison to parks, they were saying during their budget hearing, they were spending like say $4 million a year on their annual CIP improvements. Comparatively, the county should be at about 15 million a year. So you can already see the deficiency, which is then caused for when things need to be like a new roof, there's no money set aside for that. So that's when what we are working on with Misty, Jason, Ed, and his whole team right now is, and these studies that you had references, is like making sure that the improvements are gonna be done to the county's infrastructure. And the infrastructure can either be below ground, stuff that you don't see. It's kind of like renovating your house. The plumbing, the electrical, that has to be done. And those are some very large ticket numbers. And then as we are working on everything from buildings, roofs, other improvements, say for example, like even restroom facilities that need to be done on these buildings, what the goal is to come back to you and say, here's the plan of what those items are. How is this going to be implemented over a period of time? And as Ed had mentioned, that $700 million number you saw, you just can't afford $700 million. Even if Ed had $700 million, I don't think how he could spend it in a reasonable period of time. The third thing is then if what we were talking about is trying to bond for it, and that's gonna probably happen here, start doing it, say 25, 26. But the repayment is gonna come after your last bond payment for the 2013 OPEB refinancing. And so you probably saw that in our presentation on July 18th, there was actually a drop in essentially no debt service, like 34 million. Well, that $34 million of drop in debt service is really gonna either pay go for projects, or we're gonna have to borrow money to do some of these improvements. So like for example, the electrical feeder system that we talked about on the July 18th, plus or minus $30 million, that's really critical infrastructure that needs to be done. For example, like the county treasurer needs electricity to collect taxes, things like that. So we'll be coming back to you on this whole layout, but some of the work that I think we're working with on the facility side of these studies, definitely working with Aaron and what's sustainable. Also, for example, on the EV charging situation, I mean, we have to make sure that we have enough power coming into the campus from DTE, and then how is that distributed? So all that infrastructure you wanna utilize, it's just not there right now. And it's gonna have to be cost, and then how do we implement it? Steam tunnel replacements or repairs, that's also have to happen as well. IT, because IT cables go underneath there, so there's a lot of stuff that's going on, and we've been working on it, I think, since my first day here.
And I think most of you know that, I mean, we're taking a very, very thoughtful approach to everything we're doing, very holistic, right? You know, you mentioned that things have been a little quiet lately, but, you know, we've been doing the things that Brian mentioned, right? I mean, if we're talking about things, you know, rather than just taking money and putting in chargers, and then, you know, taking money and trying to electrify buildings, and then realizing that we have some primary electrical lines that need to be replaced, right? The smart thing to do is do a quick timeout and do an assessment to look at all of the electrical things we wanna do on campus. And then start with, okay, if we're gonna replace these lines, let's put in lines that are the right size, that are gonna accommodate all of these needs that we're gonna need for this, for the several years in front of us, so.
And also, as I mentioned during our presentation through management budget, it's sustainable. It's how do we continue to set aside money so that it's not every 20 years you're coming with a big bond issue. I mean, we have to come up with a way to fund this on a pay-go basis. So there's gonna have to be that combination, so more thoughtful, something that this committee, and then I would also say the board definitely is gonna have to address. Okay.
So I jumped on your space, Commissioner Cavell. Did you have something else you wanted to ask?
Yeah, thank you for that prompt, Chair, because that was sort of what I was hoping to get more into, is learning that. And then just to make sure I understand, Ed, you had said the CIP comes from the Building Improvement Fund, but that's a general fund allocation, right? The Building Facilities and Management doesn't get state, federal dollars. There's no formula grants. There's not enterprise funds, or really, from looking at the budget, any revenues or charges for services that can cover these types of things. Am I kind of getting that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, for example, I think Erin talked about, she got a grant for a study, energy study, so that's gonna help offset some of the work that we're doing. So it's not gonna be directly infrastructure, but it's helping on the planning and the assessment.
Cool. But then a $5 million CIP that's just straight from general fund, and the burden of keeping all this stuff working is just general fund for the most part.
Pretty much, yes, sir.
Okay, and then can you just lift up the interplay then between general fund, DTRF, CIP, building improvement fund?
DTRF, I know the delinquent tax revolving fund does pay for bond issues that are out there, so that we have that have been issued primarily through the building authority. So that's been a source of money that can be used. I think you heard that during the county treasurer's presentation as one of the uses of the funds in the delinquent tax revolving fund. So right now, I'm not looking at that as a source, but I think that's a fair source to contribute so that we don't use all general fund. It can be a combination of something, but I think that can come back to this committee.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Rahman, followed by Commissioner Gershenson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So it's sort of tangential to what we've been talking about, and Brian, to the same question I asked during the last session. I'm looking here and it says building space cost allocations are increasing, $311,000 for all the reasons we mentioned, right? And I get that, costs of operating are going up. I'm trying to understand the trajectory a little bit, because then in 26, we go up 311 this year, next year we fall by 200,000. And then the following year it's sort of, flat. So I just wanna make sure that I understand how this sort of corresponds to what we're talking about, because obviously there's a lot of different maintenance, and we talked about sustainability, and I understand all of it. But to the extent that it's spread out amongst the departments and countywide through all the different parts of campus, I just want to make sure I have a clear understanding of how that is extrapolated over the 2 years.
That's absolutely
Building allocation.
Building allocation, just kind of.
Primary reason.
Good thing it's a big table. For the building allocation, we look at last year's costs and develop them for the next year. So that's one of those costs that will grow each year as we go through it, because we use actual costs from the prior year to develop the 25 budget.
So then, for instance, when we talk about 26 expenditures, we're talking about internal services decrease, let's call it 200,000 due to building space cost allocation. So that's just a preliminary estimate, or are we thinking that may not be the case?
And this is specifically facilities.
Page 47, Chair.
Thank you.
It is preliminary because it's based on a rolling average, so like each year, 1 year falls off and then the most recent year gets added on, and then it's averaged over those years.
So do we think there would truly be a decrement then next year, or is that not?
That's kind of what it's looking like right now, but I would imagine it would change.
Did we switch to 3?
Yes.
So
Because we
We moved from a 5-year
five-year
average
look
to a 3-year average this year.
and that is what we think happened.
just to keep the pandemic stuff out of it. So as we move farther from the pandemic and we're looking at trends, we're trying not to look at pandemic type trends because some areas weren't doing anything and other areas like Health and Human Services, you saw their budget was huge. So we're trying to like narrow that focus for a while till we can keep the pandemic piece out of our averages.
Our expenses were skewed during that time because we used a lot of COVID funding to do a lot of different things like specialty filters and things like that around the facilities. So it made our expenditures a lot lower than they normally would be, and so it skewed our rates to be able to not recover what we should be able to.
One of the things that we talked about during the management and budget section was how we're gonna be looking at things differently going forward. You know, clearly we have some big CIP on the horizon. So we aren't gonna continue to use the same model that we've been using for 20 years to figure out building space allocation. We've already talked about Ebru, and Stephanie and I have already talked about how we're gonna look at this and what makes sense because we have some big things coming, we have a lot of changes coming. They're getting ready to implement some software that's gonna have much more detailed allocation. They've already done some of it where you can actually go and see where your space is allocated in the campus and make sure it's right. So there's gonna be a little more ownership on the departments to make sure the space that we're allocating for them is correct. So as we go through those, just in the process of tightening everything up and kind of modernizing it, that's gonna look different next year.
Thank you.
And then Commissioner Gershenson.
Yeah, just quickly, is there any room, any thought of solar panels reducing our energy consumption?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we're working with Erin's team on the sustainability office. And, you know, I wanted to give a shout out to her office too, because, you know, we were talking about funding and those grants and, you know, everything that we're doing in facilities, we're looking at through a sustainability lens, and we're teaming up with them on everything, and they're really taking the lead on trying to find those grant dollars. So, you know, we already have one installation of solar panels on campus.
Where is that?
That is on the Sheriff's Office Evidence Building. That's on the roof of that building. And I think it's been talked about, but, you know, we are on track starting in 2026 to receive 75% of our electrical needs from solar, from a provider here in Michigan, which is huge, right?
Good.
So thanks to
I'll ask
Joe
Erin
Murphy
for
and
a little
others,
more
yeah.
detail on it. Thank you.
So that last statement you made means that there is somebody out there who's using solar to generate electricity that we're buying from, and we don't have to then put the solar panels on our own property.
Yeah, I mean, we're still gonna continue to look at opportunities to have more solar panels where we can, where it makes sense. But yes, this was a you know, a way to, you know, right out of the, you know, gate, 75% of our electrical needs from solar.
Right, without investing in the assets ourselves, which is great.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anything else, Commissioner?
Done.
So I'm intrigued by your major study, campus land use master plan. I love the idea of that because this is such a big campus. We have buildings that are 100 years old. We're moving downtown for a bunch of folks. We have certain countywides who have desires for facilities. I guess my question is, how do we participate in that, or how do we see what you're thinking as that's being developed? Just as the board, I mean, we don't wanna tell you what to do, but this is just me talking. I don't wanna see us tear up green space if we don't have to, if we can knock down a 100-year-old building and use that space instead, kind of thing, thinking, and you and I've had these conversations before. So I guess what I'm what I'm encouraging is that as you're marching through that plan, I'd like to see it. Whether it comes back to EDI every 6 months or something, where you at on it. But I think that's a big piece of how we're gonna save money and save energy in the long term is really understand what facilities we need to operate in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and how do we peel away the rest of the stuff we don't wanna be sustaining. So I'm interested in that plan.
So am I. Sorry, Ed.
Not to give you.
No, leave it.
You said it, it's right in your plan, so, yeah.
And that's typically something that, you know, we try to do every 5 years, you know, with the pandemic that got shelved, so it's been a while and now is a great time, right, with how we're working differently, with the move to downtown Pontiac. And really, you know, the initiatives that we have now that maybe weren't a priority decades ago, right? So some of the things you mentioned, not just like what facilities do we need and which ones don't we need, but the actual use of the land, like do we have parking lots that are unutilized now that we no longer have to keep paving? How about we just turn that back to green space? And where do we have room for maybe a small solar field? Where, you know, where do we have wetlands? What is buildable if we needed to build something? So that's that'll be coming soon.
Excellent, excellent. Anybody else have any more questions? Commissioner Rahman?
Just a quick one here. I was curious, you know, it's really not a big expense at all, but I'm noticing vending machines going from 10,000 to 30,000. Anything significant or obviously triple the cost, but I was just curious if, you know, what that means or what we're doing with it.
Yeah, I'm looking over your shoulder to Todd because Todd knows all things vending machines. Todd with support services oversees also all of our food services, which includes vending.
Yes, that's the machines in the county buildings that we get paid a commission on the sales in those machines.
Okay. So we're actually increasing our revenue from 10 to 30? Is that how I'm
Actually, it
understanding
was budgeted before close to 30 and we moved it back up to that budget level.
Okay, so there's not a change, it's just more reflective of actual numbers.
Yeah, the revenues, especially in that case, I right, are projected.
Sure.
Right, and Todd, you're saying like from the pandemic and that the revenues obviously went way down.
To the office and when we move the building in Pontiac, you'll see a dramatic increase in that because it'll be a good vending site.
Got it, okay, just curious. Thank you.
Interesting. Okay, anybody else? Seeing no more questions, I think we're done with the facilities group. Thanks for getting us back on time.
Thank you.
Marcia, thank you.
I need my shirt.
Good. I saw that.
So we're gonna recess.
Because I'm like, I want to laugh.
311 down to.
I don't know why.
All right, we're back on, in session. We are on our last group today, which is the prosecutor's office. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we're gonna ask you to make your presentation, and then we'll have questions for you after, so the floor is yours.
Great, I'm Karen McDonald, local county prosecutor. To my left is Justin Davis, he's our Chief of Policy and Training. To my right is Betsy Haig, Chief of Administration, and then David Williams, my Chief Assistant. And I think he's gonna start today.
Sure. So you all have seen our numbers on our historical budget. This is our.
The clicker's not working.
It works if you point it, all right.
She has to click
Other
on
people
the
have the
screen.
problem.
Jason might have to click something on.
Let's see, something's not.
We did all get clicker problems. Of course, you know.
This is a test.
So you all may have this, these are historical numbers. Honestly, I don't know how much you need us to talk about that.
You
got it.
Honestly, I was gonna say, I don't know that. So this is our fourth year in front of you. We came in the first year and Karen talked about all of the deficits in the office, and you all have helped us come up to the 21st century, the transition to a modern office technologically. You've helped us staff our administration appropriately. You can see that we're all here. We have continued to make improvements in the office, to find deficits in the office. And one of the things we can tell you is that the way cases are presented to us and prosecuted has changed dramatically. One of the things that the Oxford case highlighted was the importance of our ability to review electronic evidence. We have cases now with a tremendous volume of evidence. That didn't used to be the case. In past years, we've talked about body cam in the sheriff's office, getting that. The biggest thing now for us is cell phone data and electronic evidence. We just got back from a presentation with the sheriff about a brand new case, unfortunately, of a doctor who was taking video surreptitiously of people. The case we've already charged is out of a swim school in Rochester. But the volume of electronic data in that case is absolutely overwhelming. And we could come in and talk about an army of attorneys to tackle that, but that's not the way to do that. It would take a lot of people. There's technology that can help us with that.
I just want to interject, certainly Oxford involved a lot of forensic cell phone data that I personally reviewed and understood what the challenges were in that. But even since Oxford, there's just this everyday reckoning of why is this job getting so crazy? Why are we seeing things? It's always 100 out of 10, almost 3 times a week. And because we were presenting this and we're talking about budget, I sort of got to the place where this job is not the same as it was even 2 years ago, because we are being presented with a complete investigation built on digital evidence. We charged a 6-year-old, a mother and a boyfriend for a homicide of a 6-year-old in Madison Heights 2 weeks back. That was a child that was found on the bathroom floor, and the cause of death was a perforated bowel. There was bruising, but without the cell phone analysis and data, we would not have a case. That had terrible photos of this child who was being kept in a very small contained space, stapled to a wall, text messages between both offenders about the story they were gonna make up. None of that happens, that prosecution does not happen without that digital evidence. And the reason the job feels so crazy is because the job has gotten very, very intense. We're seeing new crimes because this digital evidence and all of the technology has brought out things into the sunlight. And the case today is a perfect example. Wife comes in and just hands over a hard drive, and a cell phone, and they're just like, I think there's a whole terabyte of 3,000 to 4,000 images and videos of things this doctor's done to patients who were unconscious in different jurisdictions, all of these things. And it's taken a remarkable effort on the part of investigators to sift through this. A lot of these local law enforcement departments don't have that kind of infrastructure to deal with it. And so we are assisting, and so and that relies upon the sheriff and the computer crimes, but we have to have partners in our office that understand digital evidence. There's one thing when you're investigating it for a charge, to present for a charge, whole different thing when you're preparing a case to prosecute. So, you know, while I feel so strongly about being good stewards of the taxpayers' money, I also think that we have to sort of deal with the elephant in the room, which is that we are not asking for positions or more resources because we would like them. We are asking for it because the job in which we are obligated to do has changed. You can say crime rate is up, but that's not really a way to explain this. There's a whole just giant segment of cases now that we're charging because of the digital technology and what we can, I mean, and you know, in case anyone doesn't know, you have, there's wherever you go, whatever you do, someone's tracking you, your phone's tracking you, your email's tracking you. You know, you can really, if you want to, if we, and we have in certain cases built out what somebody was doing for weeks and months, and we know who they talked to, where they were, what they spent their money on, what videos they were viewing. And that, it isn't an option. We don't have an option not to take that evidence and use it. But it can't be done with our existing resources. And that is why the sheriff and I both come with our handout, because it's changing. It's just so, it's just changing what we have to do to meet the needs of our community. And that really is at the core of why I'm here. It also helps me just get through this, you know, to name, yes, this is crazy. Yes, we did not see these things 2 years ago. We did not see these things 5 years ago. We didn't.
The other thing is we are reallocating resources. So we had an office where we had a whole group of people who were literally moving paper files around, taking them to different prosecutors, collecting them again, putting them back in the file room. With our new system, as we've gotten through, we're not prosecuting the paper files anymore, those folks are available to do work that is more directly related to our prosecution. So we're transitioning those folks to, for example, processing digital evidence. But a person who's qualified to move paper files around isn't necessarily trained or qualified to do the digital processing. So we're trying to move some of our positions, not add people, and reallocate those resources. When we got to the prosecutor's office, we interviewed everyone in the office. And one of the people we interviewed, we were talking about how she does her job, and she said, well, I don't need a computer to do my job. Her title was financial secretary. So this is a person who had no training and didn't use a computer to manage the office's accounts. We're fortunate that some of those folks are now retiring. Obviously in the county, we don't just dismiss people, but we're able to bring in people who are adept and we can train. We also came to an office where for 12 years there'd been no training, and we've improved on that. So we've made great efforts, and Karen has said to me, to Betsy, to Justin, we're not just gonna go ask for positions or people. We need to reallocate the resources we have, make sure we're making the best use of them, and then go to the Board of Commissioners for the things we really need.
And I think the main issue is the sunsetting of some of the Oxford positions, and just to clear that up, the Oxford prosecution has not come to a close. There are appeals filed, there will be more appeals filed. That takes work, that takes time, and the sunsetting of a paralegal position doesn't make any sense from a logistics standpoint. But the thing is, if we don't add paralegals or support to help with our preparation and careful review of these cases, then I will have to start making statements like we don't have the capacity to prosecute this case, and we will have to rely on our Attorney General or our federal partners, because we just do not have, I don't have the people, particularly lawyers. It makes no sense to go through and review all of this digital evidence when we can have a paralegal do it at a lower price to the county.
To that end, when we were before you last year, we did discuss paralegals and our need for them then. We did have still in play our 2 Oxford paralegals. Those positions do sunset at the end of this fiscal year. But as Karen has articulated in our very last slide, kind of breaks down our request for this year. We can't run a highly skilled office without a highly skilled workforce. And a lot of our going to digital case management system and digital evidence organization really requires a skilled workforce that's above our regular office support clerk. And that, is a big component of why 2 paralegals is what we're asking to continue for this year. And I would say that we are working very closely with the county executives team on identifying the general funds to kind of cover those positions. And then additionally, the overwhelming media presence that is required to be transparent. And
Oh, okay, yeah, so 2 things. One, we initially were, the only thing that was approved was an addition of a victim advocate, which actually was paid for by a grant. So upon hearing that, I asked for a meeting with our county executive. We all met, and I think it was very productive, so they could hear from me exactly why these things are critical. But the biggest thing is, not only does every other prosecutor's office in the country with the size of the people we have, even any in our own state, have a communications director, but the county departments, the Board of Commissioners, you have a communications officer, Parks and Rec, the treasurer, the sheriff, the housing development, the water resource, the county exec, and we have a community liaison position that was given to us through Oxford to deal with that. So just as by way of example, this is a bright, talented 26-year-old young woman who is great, but no formal media training. And while she's packing school supplies into backpacks for Southfield that we just attended, she's also then expected to draft media releases. We get more media inquiries, I would bet a lot of money, than almost any other department in the county, and I don't have a communications director. And as a result of that, we've got David, who's the chief assistant and has a lot of really big duties. He's this morning in his office, the door shut, reworking a statement because it has to be David or me to do this. And so to be told that that's not in the budget, part of the vital, important duty that I have, I believe, is to be open and transparent to the community, particularly at a time where people view public safety as one of their top priorities. And so I believe it's my responsibility to answer community questions and to be available to answer questions from press. And I can't do that with no one assigned to assist in that. So, our community liaison is doing a lot of great things with the community, but then we've also had to sort of give her a crash course on how to deal with the media. So,
the other things I would highlight, the contracted professional services, as we've discussed, I think maybe last year we discussed that we have an embedded OCHM liaison who's been with our office since August of 2022. During that time, we've had 320 referrals to her, which means those are cases that aren't yet being charged. It's where an assistant prosecutor is taking a look at a warrant request and the evidence presented and saying, this person could probably benefit from services outside of the formal court system, and 73% of those cases are actually involving juveniles. So those are children that we're saying, let's work with this child, let's work with his family, let's do an assessment, recommend some services in the community, we are able to then sort of keep tabs and make sure they complete those and then they go into it. And we've had really good success with that, and so we're asking also to have funding toward paying OCHN via contract in our professional services contract line item.
Yeah, that's another area where, again, we came into an office not knowing that there's a liaison at the jail, there's one at the court, there's one at Children's Village. We didn't have one. OCHN came to us sort of tentatively, like, would you be willing to? And we're like, of course we would. That just wasn't the response they got for the last 12 years. They had a grant that would provide the position for a year. They and we were charged with finding long-term funding for it. That actually ended, and so they've scrounged up the funding just through the end of the budget year. So we do not want to lose Kenesha. She's great. She's taken a lot of our cases. She's helped a lot of families who are struggling with a juvenile who they really can't control, but obviously Children's Village is not where they belong. So we think the pilot project's been very successful so far. We really want to continue that. We think it's a cost savings for the county for sure.
And finally,
so one of the things that happened during Oxford as part of the whole digital evidence that we started with is Karen would be in a meeting and we'd have a question or something that we knew an answer existed for, and she'd say, get on the phone with the people who write this software and tell them I need to know X about this data. And it was pretty amazing. Everyone took our calls. A company called Cellbrite actually provided us with super powerful software for free during Oxford. And we learned how incredibly valuable it was. It allowed us to see and find data and review it with a smaller group of people. It would have been impossible to review it all without it. And so we did speak with the county executive and his team about the need for that software, and we're hopeful there's going to be room for that in the budget as well. And I think we're looking for that.
Okay.
Questions?
Do you have anything else you want to add before I open it up for questions?
Thank you.
You know, I would just say that
Go ahead.
I started the office in 1996, and basically you'd have a criminal case. It would consist of a police report, maybe a few pictures of the crime scene or the victim of the crime, criminal history. You'd have your officer in charge that you work with, maybe a knife or a gun. And what they've described is the world that we live in has changed, and the crimes, the way that they find evidence and the way we proceed with them. There's so much out there, and as a prosecutor, you want to know everything about your case, and the tools that David just mentioned, like Cellbrite, you have to look into this because you can't leave any stone unturned when you're trying a criminal case, especially when you're trying to protect the public. So it's a whole different world, and the paralegals are invaluable. These tools that we can get to help us discover the evidence just makes a world of difference and allows us to do what we do well, which is go into court and represent the people of the state of Michigan. So I think they're reasonable requests, and as David said, you know, the prosecutor doesn't just want us to come here and put our hand out. She wants us to justify why we need these things, and I think she's done that pretty well. So, thank you.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's a whole new world, and I appreciate hearing from you some of the issues like this that, you know, I would not have guessed that level of that kind of work is just a couple of orders of magnitude different than it ever was before.
Well, I mean, in the case of both of the cases I just mentioned, we wouldn't be able to charge anything for a 6-year-old who was tortured and killed.
Yeah, my question is, how do you even bring those people in and not scream in their face?
I mean, the real
What the
issue
hell
too
is
is,
wrong
and
with
I
you?
know the sheriff's experiencing this too, the effect on somebody who is preparing for this and investigating this and reviewing those images, it's not inconsequential. I mean, it takes its toll. So.
I'm sure. Okay, I have a list of commissioners who want to ask questions, so I will start with Commissioner Long, followed by Commissioner Rahman.
So, thank you. So my question's on page 22 in the categorical book, under internal services increased, and it's the infotech operation was $505,000. Is that related to what you were talking about, the digital more digital? I'm guessing after hearing what you said, but I'm not sure.
Well, it's 22 in our book.
Okay.
I don't know what it
Yeah,
means
it's in the categorical, and I don't know, that might be a Cheryl question, you know, I'm just, it says the infotech operations is up $505,000.
That is directly related to the software and the computer IT ops that they're using.
Okay. Okay.
That's related to PBK and evidence.com, I believe.
So those are,
It's right here, which is where this is just what talks about the difference.
and that is a case management system for cases. It also interfaces with other prosecutors' offices. I mean, when I joined Prosecuting Association in Michigan, I was dumbfounded that we were so far behind. You have counties with 12 prosecutors who have ability to take a tablet to court and be able to access office-wide and even interface with other offices in the state. We had no ability to do that. We only had paper files. So we have to.
So that's a cost in here, is the new system.
Yes.
Yeah, but can I
Right, going
address
there.
that, because
Okay.
the line item, Infotech's a funny thing, the
Yeah.
way it affects your budget and the way it's divided up. So when we got in the office and there was paper, there came a moment when Karen said, we are not doing this anymore. So with Infotech, we're gonna start storing it wherever the county will store it for us.
We
with
really
all
were
our
not ready for that, but I just had it
Right.
because victims were not being serviced. You know, we had cases that were being dismissed and we had no way of knowing it. So even, no way to even track what was happening. Files would disappear and I had just had it. So I said, this is what we're doing and we're doing it a week from now.
So the great news though is IT had already been looking into it, they were great, they were super helpful to us.
Yeah.
And they said, we're gonna set up a system in SharePoint, the county already has it, we buy the data from, it's either Microsoft, I think it's from Amazon actually, but
SharePoint, you said?
yeah, it's SharePoint system they set up for us. And they said, and the great news is, it's unlimited data, so as you fill it up, we'll just get you more data. Well, Commissioner Long, this is where the story gets worse. So they, and frankly, we really did not have an understanding of the volume of data we got. It turns out, unlimited at a site meant 25 terabytes, and we filled it up in roughly 2 months.
Okay.
And they said, it's not unlimited, we have to, okay, we're gonna open a new site for you. And what they found is that pattern repeated, it wasn't a specific case or Oxford. We were filling up a new 25 terabyte site every 2 to 3 months, and they kept opening sites. Turns out, they offered to do it for us, they didn't say we gotta charge you, they said it's unlimited, it's not that expensive. And it was costing the county, in fact, it still is, a couple $100,000 to pay for that storage. And that's because no one understood the volume of digital evidence we were getting and seeing and storing. So, IT department said, please, we have to find a better solution. We worked together and we arranged to contract with Axon, who runs evidence.com. They also contract with a lot of the police agencies. So that line item, it shows up, I guess, in our budget in Infotech, but that is, I don't think that SharePoint showed up in our budget. I think IT was sort of eating that.
No, I think it's in there how it's spread. I think part of when you guys went from 1 terabyte first set, I think it started showing up.
Okay, so that's what that big expense is.
Okay.
And now we have
That
contracts.
makes sense, because now you're putting everything on this evidence.com now?
Correct.
Okay. And are you caught up with it, or, I mean, are you, with all those papers, are you caught up with
We have no more paper files.
Okay, that's
Really, any file, even historically, I could pull up on my phone, Kara could pull up, we can be anywhere in the world and see the latest update on the phone, it works well. It doesn't have all of the data on historical cases, but you can at least look up a case number.
And that was before you could not, it was paper, you had to come back into the office.
You had to call somebody.
That's kind of, I mean, that's crazy to think we're Oakland County.
You saw it, you came to, you came to tour it, and nobody believed us, it was
Right.
just.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it's like the case didn't exist. You know?
I remember
Right.
Spiz saying, what are you gonna do if there's a fire?
Yeah.
And I won't repeat what I said, but it wasn't, I was like, well,
We're in bad shape.
we're in bad shape if there's a fire.
Thank
So
you,
yes, no more paper files.
Okay.
And we've transitioned from the SharePoint site to our new case management system, which thankfully is largely funded by the state. The legislature allocated resources. It cost quite a bit for Infotech to get that integrated. In fact, they're still working on the integration with mainframe. But that's now up and running. We're no longer adding data to SharePoint, but the process of moving a couple hundred terabytes from the cloud to evidence.com also turns out to be more difficult than I thought. So that's in process. And when that's done, we can stop paying Microsoft or Amazon.
Okay, thank you. That was a good explanation. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Commissioner Rahman, followed by Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for the presentation. Very eye-opening, to say the least, as it was last year as well.
Yeah.
I'm very glad to hear that we've finally gone digital, which it sounds like I'm surprised it took us this long to do. If I remember correctly, last year too, David, we talked about getting some paralegals and there's some staffing changes and things. So hopefully, this list aside, we've at least made strides from where we were this time last year, it sounds like. Is that
Well, we
correct?
didn't get anyone last year.
We didn't get a
but-
paralegal last year, we asked for it.
And it wasn't granted?
No.
We gave it Oxford.
We had the
still have the
Oxford
Oxford
money for
one.
Oxford. So look, the pitch we made last year and we've made since then is, if you look at, so Karen and I are both in private practice. And what you would do is look at where's the optimal level to have someone do the work. And you don't want attorneys, as they were when we got here, standing at the copier. Attorneys told us they stayed late
Right.
at the office when there was no line for the copier. We don't want attorneys doing that. Because otherwise we're coming back to you saying we need more attorneys.
Preferably, we don't want them copying things at all.
Well,
but-
that's right. We need more attorneys because we can't make copies fast enough. So we try to allocate the work to the people who are in the best position to do it at the lowest cost. And good paralegals like we have now, can do a lot of the work that attorneys are doing at a lower cost. And now we can have some of our folks who are moving paper files, or we call them typists who are typing, help us with digital.
And the two paralegal positions that were grouped into Oxford, which is the proposal is to sunset, we're not gonna let go of any of those people, we'll find a place for them. But I have to say, once the immediate trial prep and trial of Oxford died down, there is a line of major crime prosecutors standing at their door to, can you help me with this case? Can you help me with this case? Because the need is so high and nobody's ever experienced the ability to say, oh, maybe I don't have to spend all day organizing my exhibits. Instead, I can talk to my witnesses and work on my preparation because I have a paralegal to help me with this. So we have enough to keep them busy for a very long time.
Yeah, so as of today, as of October 1st, we will have the exact same number of paralegals we had when we got here January 1 of 2021. And really, the ratio is like, it's like 13 attorneys to 1 or 16 attorneys to 1 paralegal. Ideally, if you could just start the system over, it would be probably closer to like 6 attorneys to 1 paralegal. This will just help us start working towards that.
So given that, I guess my question is with this list of six items that you have on the list. The first question is, to me, again, not being in the know, it doesn't sound like it's huge. It doesn't sound like it's a huge lift by any means. Do we know roughly what the cost is all in for these 6 is my first question. And then second is, if we can't afford all 6, is there a prioritization of, hey, look, this is the very top of our list, if we can only do 2 of them or 3 of them? And then what does that look like?
So a whole list of it is $750, but the budget had currently budgeted for the victim advocate position, and that's when we've asked the state to fund that. That's where most of our actually all of our victim advocates are funded. So there's about $125,000 in the budget now that we're gonna get the state funding on. So you're plus 750 minus 125, $625,000 to look for. And I know the county executive is looking and the chief finance officer are looking to see where that money might come from.
And 625 will cover everything on that list?
Yes.
And then paralegals you'd mentioned, evidence review software, so that's different than the software we talked about last year? Is that-
Yes, it's different than evidence.com. This is, it's a form of the Cellbrite software specifically related to digital evidence.
Specific to review digital evidence, particularly on phones.
Okay.
So evidence.com is storage, so like
Yes.
how much is on your phone.
Okay.
This software is how do you actually look at everything on a phone.
So this is a perfect example, the 6-year-old homicide case. We immediately, when they presented the case, my IQ on cell phone analysis is pretty high now. And so I said, all right, try to find the conversations when you pull up the software of this conversation that took place 2 days before the child was killed to 24 hours after. Concerning messages back and forth, but you had to know to go to Facebook Messenger or not. And again, this is my first rodeo on this. We had what they gave to us from computer crimes. But what I knew is that the full file system download that they get, that software, that have at computer crimes oftentimes contains things that they're not handing us to begin with. So there was some back and forth about restraining this little boy. And I could tell by the conversation there was a picture. And we searched and searched and our limited tools couldn't find it. So I had the detective call over to computer crimes and say, on the full file system, go to this day and pull up any image that went between mom and boyfriend, and there was a photo of the boy being stapled to the wall. So that kind of software, having tools that will assist us in sifting through what they provide. You know, right now, I can't just take their full file system because I don't have the tools and the software. Some Sellbright's been generous and sort of, you know, we pitch them, like we give, like, you know, there's all these instances like, can you please help? And they'll give it to us, but in general, without that favor, I don't have the ability to even get through that. And it's what you're doing in investigating a crime to charge it is completely different than what we need when we go to trial. So that kind of software and tools we need to prep for a trial or a plea. But as you know, or maybe you don't, pleas are a conclusion to really hard work in prepping your case and working your case, right?
So I guess my only last question then to our finance team is $625,000. I don't know. I'm not sure. In the grand scheme of everything we're talking about here, is that something that's even within reason? Are we close? Are
We had I'm sorry. We had a couple of conversations. We met a prosecutor, and then we had another conversation. We are looking into it. I'm pretty sure we're gonna be able to find it, but we're like looking for it.
I think the thing is like where else is it gonna come from?
Right.
I mean, and I think it's more likely that it will be there, but it's just really with every other hearing that you still have.
Sure.
Especially say tomorrow. We just got to make sure it all fits in.
Is the sheriff coming?
Yes.
Can.
But they haven't been told, they haven't been told, no, we can't find it, cause we're still kind of in the process of going through this. We're
No,
hearing
and I gotta
things-
commend you because when I said I wanna be at the meeting, you know, they listened because there's just context that has to be provided. And what my goal was, I don't wanna come in here and be oppositional to what the county executive has proposed. And so the only way to do that is to just be very open about, okay, I want you to hear from me personally why this is really important. And that's part of the reason why I'm proud to be in this county and proud to be an elected, because we can all do that regardless of what letter is after our name. And I think that they're working with us, which is
I have to say, I really appreciate the clarification about the victim advocate in terms of I would say from our side is the not understanding that it was grant funded right off the bat.
Right.
So with that clarification, that allowed us like, okay, on the other issues, I understand what they're trying to achieve, and it's, you know, everything is even from facilities, where's the parity? I mean, where's the parity on what they're asking for? But also too is, as we go forward, you know, to me, they're already laying the case for, we're gonna need more paralegals. And so from my perspective, the CFO is like, oh, next year, they're gonna probably come back for 2 new paralegals. Where are we going to be ahead rather than just dealing with FY25? That's what I'm trying to change this whole budget process is, it's not just about tomorrow, I have to have you look beyond tomorrow. And you know, this is one area or one group that came to us like, we need you to start thinking. The bigger thing is like on the technology, and they were talking about the amount of storage. This is not the only one that has to have storage requirements. So I wanna make sure we prepare you that wait till the budget on the IT side is really gonna start blowing up because we all need more storage, and where is that? And how we're gonna get it, and how we're gonna pay for it, or what's gonna have to be reallocated. But I think what I commend is that saying, we revamped our office to deal with what is today. And that's a great segue for us to say to another department, hey, how would you redo what the services you're providing? It's not to say it's a return on investment, it's just that how are we providing the best value? And that's where I appreciate their energy back to us and appreciate the calling the meeting and working with the county executive team.
You know, I met with a group of district court judges, and a new judge from Pontiac said that when he walked into his courtroom for the first time, he had a millennium meltdown due to the technology. And that is similar to what we experienced when we walked in. Remember, I was a circuit court judge. I know what the standard of our capital improvements and our technology was provided as a judge. And I walked into the prosecutor's office and it was like a time warp. And even I was at the sheriff's office today for this press release, and you know, that guy, I mean, he knows what he's doing. He has got the things he needs to get his job done. And I'm starting at such a deficit that I can't even get a comms person. And so I think looking at it it shouldn't just be, well, everybody only gets this much. We're elected officials, and particularly if you have a long-term elected who runs it a certain way, like the county deserves some equitable resources across the county, regardless of who the elected is. And that we are in need of that. We really are in need of that. So I think I get a little frustrated that I'm viewed in the same playing field when we started at such a deficit. You know, the fact that I have to pretty please on a comms director when everyone who has a lot less like media inquiries and just already has one it's hard because we as lawyers are spending time, you know, taking pen to paper on press releases and calling reporters, and we get multiple inquiries a week, sometimes probably today a mountain of them because of the press release that I just did with the sheriff, with the press conference.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I will say that fiscal has been, in my view, through this process, working more closely with all of the departments earlier. And it's made it, these reviews, I think, a lot more transparent. It's a lot easier to see where the problems really are and why. So, yeah, we want you to have Oakland County level of service that you're providing to the world and technology so you can do your job that way. So, and I'm glad to see you working with fiscal, and I believe we're gonna figure this all out. And
you know, I mean, I think it's important that I'm in these conversations. I think the elected.
So, okay, so if you're done, Commissioner, I have Commissioner Powell followed by Commissioner Cavell and then Commissioner Gershenson.
So, thank you, Commissioner Ryman. I was feeling the same way, especially when you threw the figure out exactly what it is. But this communications department is what got me like really, really frazzled when we have one in every other department. And she is right. Her department is just as important as, top of the top when it comes to stuff like that. So my question is, was it just a budgetary thing that they said you couldn't have a communication department or a communication person, or what was exactly?
We asked for a community liaison in the Oxford case to try to get, that was necessary. But, you know, everybody knows this, we had to hire a crisis management person outside of the county. Once Oxford happened, you know, we had no capacity to even hold a press conference. And oh, by the way, my press media room used to be the library. It's on the 5th floor. It's smaller than this room. I stand at a podium that is 25 years old with canned lights from the ceilings. And we go to all of the other departments and the stuff is great, you know? We're dealing with like dinosaur technology, but I called Dave Coulter up immediately. I called Dave Woodward. I need some help. Do you have somebody from the county you can send me to help with media? he just they didn't have the capacity either. So then we got the community liaison and we tried to did get rid of our media person out of county and tried to put it on our community liaison, who again is literally doing things like, you know, planning picnics and packing backpacks and talking to groups, but also then responding to media inquiries. So we didn't have it, we asked for community liaison, we just wanted to keep her. And then we were initially told you can't even keep the community liaison. So that's why we had the second meeting.
So I'ma just say this to my colleague, we were well aware, McDonald has made us very aware of her situation from day one. And I'ma just ask, she already know I'm advocating, I've been advocating for her since she got in that seat. And so I think for them to be more of an efficient department of what we know our county status quo is in this county and this state, what we stand by, that ain't it. Her department ain't it. And that's an embarrassment to us for what we hold our standard here in customer service in any department dealing with any of our residents. So I'm just gonna be transparent. She know I'm gonna support everything she need in her office. I don't know, but we gonna make this team, let them do their magic. And I'm just gonna advocate for her. And I think that if you all don't get anything, can we not find out a whole year in a hearing that they didn't get their paralegal? Cause that wasn't cool. Because they like he just said, now they needed one, now it's two. He's thinking further ahead. So next year they're gonna be talking about they need three. So can we somehow figure this out and keep this on our radar?
I wanna say one thing though, just to be really specific, because I'm not here pounding my fist on the table and say it's not fair. Just let's take the case that the sheriff and I did a press conference today. The charges that we've issued already related to the Goldfish Swim School, it's not all the charges. We had to announce today, those charges were based on the defendant going in and videoing a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, 2 adult females from the changing area right next, adjacent, with using a camera. We know that's not all of it.
Right.
What we're gonna receive are countless inquiries from the public and from reporters about, well, when will you know how many victims there were? What the sheriff released today about the ongoing investigation with the images for his services when he was a doctor in these hospitals. Now what we have sitting here are so many people who knew they were patients at those 2 hospitals. They don't know if they were victims. They reach out to us. And we have to have a capacity to respond to that. I mean, the email the sheriff set up goes to the sheriff, and he actually has a comms director, so I think it's gonna be a little easier for him, but we also get those requests because.
It'd be easier for any department that has a community person in place.
It does.
So this ain't no you against the sheriff.
No,
Cause
I mean,
you know I have my relationships with both of y'all, and I
I'm
understand
advocating
this is
for
not a
him as
compare
well.
you to there. You're
No.
advocating for what you need.
I'm advocating for him as well. We both feel, in fact, I spoke to him about it, you know, the job has changed, his job has changed. It's imperative that we both make efforts to explain and give context to how the job has changed. We are absolutely on the same page, Mike Bouchard and I.
We so hear you, but I just wanna put more emphasis on it.
Okay.
You don't have a community person.
No.
That's a problem, period. We could scratch off, that's a problem, period. Thank you. No, she needs her list. I'm done, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cavell, followed by Commissioner Gershenson.
Yeah, I just want to highlight the difference for the commissioners that were here, just the difference between people like in facilities or working within a department versus what I think we'll be in for with electeds also advocating for their budgets, just the difference in tone. But I have 2 kind of data points just to lift up so we can have some more context to this conversation, not to sound cold, but it might come off that way. And then second, to ask a couple of questions and then hone in on the positions that the prosecutor's asking for. So first, in an attempt to be data-driven, right? We just heard from facilities, we have an $864 million deficit in our CIP program due to years and decades of not doing facilities management properly. Right, so just again, to try and contextualize things for us on the board, really, this is me talking, but just to lift up. And the things that the prosecutor has mentioned are terrible and heinous, but I just want to also recognize using data, because that's how we can best inform our budgets, our values and our data, is in 2020, we had 20 homicides at this point in the year, right? Every year, July 1st, there's a report that comes out from the state police that's like a mid-year check-in. So 2020, we had 20 homicides at this point in the year. 2021, we had 21 homicides. 2022, we had 26 homicides. 2023, we had 12 homicides. And this year, we've had 16 homicides at the July 1st check-in point. Again, just for context, not that these situations or deaths are not tragic, they are, but just to give us context of what we're talking about. Also want to lift up the incidence of crime 10 years ago in Oakland County, whether it's a speeding ticket or a capital crime. Incidents throughout all of Oakland County in 2014 were 63,000 reported incidents from the 44 policing agencies in Oakland County. And last year data is available, so the end of 2023, that was 43,600 incidents. And again, that's speeding tickets all the way on up to murder. That's a 31% drop in the crime rate overall. Again, not to say that the prosecutor doesn't need these positions, but again, giving us context and preparing us for when we talk to the prosecutor today and the sheriff tomorrow, and also the courts, just to put context around the stories they're telling us and the heinous things they've had to go through. Second point to that, as we've all talked, at least in PH&S, the APAs that work for Karen, that have to end Karen herself, that has to go through all these like terrible videos. There's an EAP program that's part of the 35% salary and benefits package that every Oakland County gets. There's an EAP program. There's PTSD counseling. There's therapy that's covered with just being an Oakland County employee. My therapy costs $14 per week as my copay. And if you need more crisis intervention therapy, that's available through Oakland County already, so everyone knows they can take advantage of that. To the questions of the budget, to refocus on that. Asking for these new positions, I see that in your PowerPoint here, you had 12 open positions last year and 9 open positions expected for this upcoming fiscal year. Why not reallocate or however you call those, reclassify those positions to help cover what sounds like a huge need of a community liaison and a communications person?
So looking at the slide on that, there are 7 positions from the Oxford grant, which are going to sunset. We have been working pretty diligently to move people out of those positions because we didn't want to have to tell any of our employees that we were no longer going to need their service after the grant expired. So some of those positions are accounted for in that. A lot of those positions are also attributable to our Family Support Division, which is Title IX funded by the state of Michigan. They can only do work in our Family Support Division, and so they're not able to be working on our general cases. There's sort of a high turnover rate within that division, and so some of those positions, I would say 2 to 3 are allocated to that. And that would account for the 9 that you're highlighting.
But the open lawyer positions is how many are open technically right now?
I believe we have 3 open assistant prosecutor positions.
And we are actively hiring and seeking to fill those. People move around a lot more than they used to. But I am never, ever willingly going to suggest that we take assistant prosecutor positions and fill them and make them paralegal positions. Absolutely not. I would not, no, I feel, no. There's no way I'm doing that. And I also want to just respond to one thing. I'm not here saying there's a rise in violent crime. What I'm saying is, first of all, a homicide rate is not a snapshot of what's going on in our communities. And in most homicide cases, we don't need high level cell phone data analysis in most of those cases, right? We're 8th in the nation for trafficking.
Yeah.
These cases I'm talking about, those are sexual assault cases. Those are child abuse cases. And these are vulnerable people that up until recently, we haven't even had the tools to protect, and we do now. And so while I agree that violent crime is down in general, the level of sophistication of perpetrators is higher. The auto theft rings, we can barely keep up, and again, this is where I'm on the same page with the sheriff. We can barely keep up with the technologies they use to steal cars, and the retail fraud rings. It's just different, right? And so if we're not willing to shift and change to meet the needs of our community, I think maybe you'll see the same homicide rate, and maybe a lot more kids and vulnerable people will continue to be assaulted with absolutely no law enforcement response, so.
Well, to that, I don't understand then how a public information officer helps address trafficking or sift through the mountains and terabytes of data you're saying you need help with. Help me understand why a PIO is at the top of your list or a community liaison versus other positions.
Sure. First of all, it isn't related to that. Those are two separate things. The communications director PIO is a request based on the fact that an office that's required to do the things I'm required to do, and requires some spokesperson and media person. We were using and are using our community liaison. That is set to sunset. Our original request to extend that was denied. So those are two different things. However, I would absolutely argue that we all have a basic human right to be safe, and the public trust you have in your law enforcement. I am the highest law enforcement official in this county, the prosecutor is. My job is to be open and honest and give information to people so that increases public trust, and they know that they can call us and they know what we do, and they will feel safer in their community. And if I don't get a spokesperson, it's very different.
Yeah, I hear you. Have you found like a resistance from Walt or Teresa in the DPC in being able to help? Because I believe they're growing. I mean, we just heard their presentation last week. They're getting 4 or 6 more staff in this budget. So I understand your need to be able to communicate effectively, but isn't that part of
DPC, I apologize, can you educate me on that?
It's the county executive.
Public communication. Public communication.
It's not relevant for us right now.
Are they not helping you?
No.
Commissioner. I think they told us right off the bat that they're spending their day responding.
Right.
They need an office. We have the top 2 people acting as communication officers a lot of the time. That's not their
right.
job.
But what I'm saying is we already have an office that's getting bigger. So if it may not be that Karen needs a PIO, it might be that like Karen's team needs to be better plugged in with Walt and Teresa's team, perhaps.
What I'm gonna say, I'm gonna cut you off there, Commissioner Cavell. I think we need to trust the departments to know what they need, and they are communicating directly with fiscal about, and who I believe also represents the county executive's organization.
I agree. That's why the PIO wasn't in their budget, I think. That's what I'm trying to get to, is the PIO wasn't in their budget because they've been talking about this.
But I think they're saying they've been, David over here is writing press releases. And
In
I don't
responding to calls.
even,
I will have gotten texts and emails while we're here from Gabby Kloss, who's our community liaison, saying she's gotten calls from Kara Berg at the Detroit News, guy from Channel 7 was there. I'll have 3 or 4 of those that I have to respond to this afternoon.
Today, right.
And listen, so Commissioner Cavell, I think as a county, we've agreed that communicating with the media to the public is important, and we've funded that. And the prosecutor's office hasn't and does not have that. And from our perspective, that needs to be someone who literally is in our office. It is not practical, and we haven't been provided the resources from outside the office. And frankly, I don't think the sheriff could have someone located in the executive office building doing his press for him.
Right.
Literally where
You wouldn't have that
Gabby's within the
expertise. Yeah.
office, that's right.
Yeah.
So we wanna be just like the rest of the county and the Board of Commissioners, be transparent and respond to the media. And by the way, we have a policy. Our policy is to respond to every media inquiry. Even if we can't help them, to say we've received your call, it's important to be transparent, and if there's information we can provide, we will provide it. And that just historically wasn't done, they just didn't answer the calls and the phones, and that's fallen to us. So we need someone whose job is to do that.
Okay, so can I ask my last question?
Last question.
Thank you. You had mentioned the Oxford case might go to the Attorney General if we're not able to support.
They're all shaking their heads here like that's not.
I didn't say that. What I said was, in ongoing into the future, if we don't have the capacity to prosecute and review this sort of digital evidence, we cases that are presented to us with that mountain of evidence, we won't have the capacity to actually do a thorough job in prosecuting if we don't have people that can sift through it and prepare it correctly. But this has nothing to do with Oxford.
Okay, forgive me. Okay, but but broadly speaking, is it, and forgive my ignorance, but is it bad to have the Attorney General do this on our behalf?
Do what exactly?
Well, again, like if you're saying if there's reams of data you can't like comb through and the Attorney General takes over the case, is that what I got from the tone or the inflection or what I interpreted was that was somehow not ideal. Is that other than just like the kind of like feeling of wanting Oakland County people to be able to prosecute in Oakland County, is that?
So the Attorney General, there's only a very small percentage of the Attorney General's office that deals with criminal prosecutions, and those are mainly picking up those prosecutions throughout the state in smaller counties that might have just one prosecutor to aid in assistance to less resourced counties. So it's not about being ideal or not ideal, it's that we've always, because we are the second largest county in the state, been able to prosecute the cases that are presented to us that occur within our county. So I guess it's my way of saying, in order to do our job, we need more technical support in reviewing this evidence.
I just want to say, our job is to prosecute the criminal cases in Oakland County, and when the voters elect you all and Karen, they get to decide how cases should be prosecuted here. And it's our job to do that, and we need the resources to do that, and the idea that someone else in the state is going to decide how and what's going to be prosecuted in our county, that's not right.
But
It's our
yeah,
job.
no statement, like fully support the Attorney General, fully support the Sheriff, this isn't a turf thing. I'm just saying, going forward, we're gonna have to look at how and we approach cases and if we can.
Commissioner Gershenson.
Okay. So I want to thank you all. This was really very powerful and very honest, and this is what it should be. And we as a board have never had such a great relationship with fiscal. There's great communication with the executive team. So you can hear that we hear you, and we're looking forward to working this through. Charlie, I just have to correct you on one thing. I did talk to the sheriff about you saying that they had therapy in their deputies had therapy service in their health insurance, and they no longer do. Their insurance has changed. So I don't want to debate that. We can talk to the sheriff about it tomorrow, but I just wanted to clarify that one point.
You're on the same page as us, Marcia.
So anyway, I just wanted to say I think we should wrap this up. I think we've heard it, we get it. And
Commissioner Weipert has
I was on there.
clocked in, so he would like to go
I
ahead.
clocked in very early. But I
Bottom of my list
a couple
on
of
the
same
sheet
point.
here.
I'm glad you're absorbing the positions that are, I was gonna ask that, so. Cause you wouldn't wanna let good
No.
people go.
No.
And so you don't see.
Not
But,
gonna do that.
and just, I'm a lawyer and I practice, the world is different. Just so you know, it's not just them coming and presenting for us.
Thank you for telling us
People are
that.
different, the crimes are different, the whole process is different, so they're not kidding. But I'm glad has been talking to you about, and it sounds encouraging that they're, if it's $650, it sounds like they're gonna work with you and find it.
That's what I.
And Brian, you weren't here last year, were you? You weren't here last year. Last year you came in and told us the need for the paralegals, that was, and it shocked us all.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to do it the best we could. The solution was the Oxford funding, so.
Yeah.
So you weren't we had the same type of presentation. Now it's a bigger deal on technology and employees about that, so. I'm glad you're listening, and you're in a different role too. A
And
better
just
role.
finally,
So.
I just want you to know how much we really do appreciate you all. We do. I feel very blessed to be in this county and also how the county exec and the CFO are working with us. We do appreciate what the commissioners do and what they're doing. And I remind everyone that everyone has a tough job. And you can't assume that people know things. And part of that very important role of communicating to the public and to our funding source and to our county executive what is happening. Because if you don't know, then it's difficult to make these kinds of decisions.
Well, and let us say on behalf of the board, we appreciate everything you've done.
Yes.
To keep our community safe. You've been incredible and you're very much respected, the work that your department does.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanna add real quickly, this is my 6th year on the board, so I have watched as you came in and you had, 40-year-old carpet. Seriously.
Right.
So.
I remember.
Yep, came over there, we did.
And we all laugh, but it is a process to really get your department to be the benchmark, the world class that you should be in the second largest, richest county in the state of Michigan. And we have these high profile crimes and they're not going away. And I appreciate the quality of people you have in the office and the work that you do. I appreciate that fiscal is trying really hard to work with the departments this year as opposed to just, not that we haven't in the past, but I'm seeing improvements in that direction too, and I think this process is more open, more transparent, and everybody's trying to work together. I'm not seeing so much of the, well, no, that ain't gonna happen. Marcia said it an hour ago, I wanna see this happening throughout the year. If a problem arises or we really need to look at something differently, let's have those month-long discussions to figure out how to solve the problem, so.
And we're learning, I'm learning.
I remember we told you in the very beginning, you gotta come to us more than once a year.
Yeah. And we have some improvement, we can improve on that. It's just, it's been a heck of a.
I already know.
Well, yeah.
He has to go do press releases now after this,
It's,
Did you have one more thing, Commissioner?
I was just gonna mention, as far as the paralegals, I was under the assumption we granted it last year.
too.
So it was eye-opening to me today to hear that that never happened. I knew about the software, I knew about a lot of the changes, we went from the Stone Age to the digital age, I get that. But I thought in terms of staffing, we actually had approved it, so.
Well, see, then you're a newbie because this has been going on for a long time.
Yeah. Right. No, but I'm saying since last year.
No, that we thought, that we were under the impression it was granted and it wasn't, and we didn't find out for another year.
Right.
No, it's a process that we're recognizing needs some changes.
Right.
And
transparency.
Yeah.
Right.
And back
And
and
we're
forth, so.
we really have that infrastructure now in place where we can actually try to move ahead.
All right, Commissioner Hoffman, because I saw you first and then Commissioner.
Trying to have the last word.
Oh,
You wanna go after me? I just got a room.
You want the last word, give it to him.
Alexander Hamilton once said the first duty of society is justice. No matter what job you do in life, you have to have the right tool. And I do appreciate the fact that we live in a wealthy county and hopefully we can provide the tools you need to get the job done.
I appreciate that.
That would have been a good note to end on, that's why I wanted to go back.
Commissioner Powell, can we just echo again, please do not let it be a year. And we don't hear. So even if I got the quarterly call, David, and you know I will, just so we know what's going on, because to be honest, your department is like on our radar now. You know, before it was the courts, I think prosecutors made it for this year. So just please, cause we don't know and we don't wanna be blasted in no press release.
Right.
Never.
Thank you.
That is not my brand. I do not do that.
That's fair.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. I
Um,
wanna go see the new project.
Yeah.
You should come by. We'll show you,
Hey, Commissioner, we still have public comment.
We'll show you.
Oh, I do.
Oh, Commissioner, we're not done yet.
Still in the meeting.
We're still in the meeting.
We're still in the meeting.
Yeah, we got a public comment.
Okay.
You may have a seat if you'd like, or you can stand, whichever. Please introduce yourself and the community you're from, and then the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I live in Bloomfield Hills. Good afternoon. We request that the county no longer conduct business with entities that profit from apartheid, genocide, war, human trafficking, the military industry, slavery, surveillance, or the imprisonment industry. The board has a duty to pass a financial ethics policy. This means 3 prongs. 1, the vendors that the county contracts with must not have a relationship with unethical entities. The research studies, donations, traffic lights, street construction facilities, all should be ethical sources. 2, all bonds, securities, and investments, including through Michigan Class and as a principal, should be ethical. No investments in genocide. 3, pensions and benefits should come from ethical investments. No money from Vanguard and BlackRock, which fund genocide. At the moment, the county has a purchasing unit policies and procedures manual. It barely mentions the general nebulous idea of conflict of interest. Oakland County also has a human trafficking commission, but this is not enough. We need direct action, overarching codification. We need an ethical finance policy. A draft of such a policy was emailed to the board. In the past 300 days, over 40,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli attacks on Gaza. These are just the corpses with names. Thousands more of bodies have been shredded beyond recognition or are still under the rubble. The Lancet medical journal estimates 180,000 people have been murdered. Over 16,000 children have been murdered, with another child killed or wounded every 10 minutes. Over 17,000 children have been orphaned. Israel has thrown 70,000 tons of explosive power on Gaza. This is 3 times the amount of explosive power that was thrown over Hiroshima on an area the size of Detroit. The United Nations, International Criminal Court, World Health Organization, Amnesty International, Oxfam, International Court of Justice, Save the Children, Doctors Without Borders, the Red Cross, and others attest this is the most documented genocide in history. What we are asking from you is to prohibit profiting off and doing business with entities of apartheid, war, military-industrial complex, slavery, surveillance, human trafficking, the prison industry. What you can do right now is stop giving county money to the Michigan-Israel Business Accelerator and stop making contracts with Israeli companies which participate in genocide through the Michigan-Israel Business Accelerator. You can stop contracts with vendors like Caterpillar, which crush to death Palestinians. You should do this and pass an ethical finance policy because you care about the county. It's our home, and we want to be proud of it. We do not want our home to be fueled by the blood of children.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara, thank you. Meeting was Yes, yeah.
Because I've seen it for the
Yeah,
retirement
it
board.
is.
Okay, do we have any other business? Seeing none, I will call this meeting adjourned.